Will call to order the November 17th, 2025 meeting of the Williamson County Board of Education. Board members, please begin by recording your attendance.
There are 12 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance led by Melissa Wyatt, followed by a moment of silence. Please stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Before we move into our public comment period, I want to say thank you to Deputies McGargy and Rutledge from the Williamson County Sheriff's Department for being here tonight and serving us. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, we will move into items of particular public interest, which is our public comment period. We have 10 speakers who have signed up to speak tonight, so each of you will have up to 3 minutes if you choose to take the full 3 minutes. I will call two at a time, so first person come on up and then the second person be ready. Just note that at the podium there's a screen that will show your time, so please be paying attention to that as you speak. Our first speaker is Nidhi Gupta, followed by Rooney Gu.
As parents, we fear when we are not connected to our children 24/7 via wireless communication devices. My name is Dr. Nidhi Gupta. I'm a mother of a 5th grader and a kindergartner, pediatric endocrinologist here in Franklin, screen time researcher for the last 10 years, and author of best-selling book, Calm the Noise. I'm not here to repeat the research you all already know about bell-to-bell, phone-free school day. The evidence is clear. Simply the presence of smartphones in learning environment affects students' attention, memory, behavior, empathy, and school culture. Tonight, I want to briefly address 5 concerns that were raised and hopefully reassure some thoughtful and worried parents. Number 1. Are we sheltering children from the real world? No. The goal is not to shelter children from the real world, but to prepare them for it with stronger academics, robust mental health, and real human connection. A phone-free school day strengthens these skills. Number 2, shouldn't high schoolers be allowed to use phones during lunch? As adults, we often take a break by scrolling, but scrolling is not resting. It is stimulating and exhausting. Students need boredom or human conversation during breaks so their brains can reset for the next class. A typical teen receives 237 notifications per day, mostly during school hours. Checking their texts and scrolling social media during lunch and then expecting them to focus on the next class is unfair. A phone-free lunch is not a punishment. It is cognitive reset. Number 3, don't students need to learn responsible phone use because they will need these skills eventually? Absolutely, but the key word here is eventually, not right now. Right now, their developing brains cannot resist addictive algorithms. Number 4, how will parents communicate with children during the day? We once had clear systems in place before smartphones became common. Urgent matters were handled by the school. Everything else waited until dinner. Those systems are being revived by schools nationwide. Last, how about emergencies? Law enforcement has made it very clear. Phone use during emergencies increases chaos, spreads misinformation, and gets in the way of first responders. Students need to hear safety instructions, not be recording videos or calling home. Please let me summarize. Lunch period is not just downtime. It is developmental time, critical for communication, friendship, and building school community. A bell-to-bell phone-free day is not a restriction. It is a gift of attention, of calm, of connection, a gift of restoring childhood. In a world
Time.
filled with digital noise, I invite the board today to lead not with fear, but with evidence, courage, and care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. We live in a time when if you ask a high school student how they're doing, the most common answer is, I'm tired. My name is Ricky Gu, and I'm a junior at Ravenwood High, and I'm here to speak directly about the proposed revision to Policy 6.312 with this perspective within the community being directly affected. I surveyed 397 students about their day-to-day lives with phones, and I'll be using that data to support my argument. When the original phone ban was introduced last year, limiting phones and instructional hours, it worked. Students are focused. But banning phones during lunch doesn't benefit students or teachers. The justification for this change cites a single article stating that teachers say phone enforcement is difficult. This article was published before our district implemented in-class restrictions. And according to my survey, 83% of students say phone usage during instructional hours has already decreased or was never a problem. The current policy is working. Lunch is the one time in the day when teachers are not instructing and should not be responsible for micromanaging thousands of personal devices. The justification mentions mental health, so let's talk about it. 94.3% of students listed schoolwork, academic pressure, burnout, or anxiety as their biggest stressors. Only 4 students out of 397 said phones were the issue. Taking away phones during instruction helps mental health. Taking them away during our only break does the opposite. One student wrote, "We don't get any other breaks, not even recess. Taking our phones during the one non-academic time is ridiculous." Every single student in the survey said they socialize during lunch. Banning phones doesn't increase socializing. It removes autonomy and comfort during the only downtime we have. Students already talk, laugh, and interact. There may be concerns about this data only reflecting Ravenwood, but in the policy itself, there were notes that Franklin High School saw essentially no students on their phones during lunch, with a visit from a school official. The claim that banning phones will force students to talk is unnecessary, and it's already happening. Since the policy is so focused on what we use our phones for, let's address that. 88% of their students at lunch use it for something other than social media. 67% of it use to communicate with parents. The policy says the front office is enough, but what about schedule changes, practice adjustments, carpools, and siblings getting sick? If 2/3 of the WCS population is forced to route all communications through the front office, how overwhelmed do you want them to be? And now safety. Justification says that parents shouldn't text during emergencies, and that's true. However, there are students noting dangers sometimes before the staff are aware. A strict no phone policy undermines that, and in real crisis, parents will not wait for official communication. They will panic and they will come. In Nashville, during the Covenant shooting, parents rushed to the school. In Uvalde, hundreds of parents revived before official communication. We're not asking for unlimited use. We're asking for 20 minutes of autonomy in a 7-hour day, our 1 moment to breathe. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our next 2 speakers, Clinton and Amanda Browning, I believe, are together, and then John Paul Kukulka.
Good evening. My name is Clint Browning. This is my wife, Amanda. We are here tonight to shed light on the failures of the board to follow their code of conduct policy and protect the students at my daughter's school. Since the start of the year, one child has violated the levels 3 and 4 misbehaviors listed in the code of conduct more than a dozen times. And yet the school board refuses to remove this boy from the school, claiming federal protections of children with disabilities. The boy has punched both students and teachers, choked fellow classmates, and even assaulted a parent as they were trying to protect their child in the hallway. More than 3 of his victims needed medical care after the assaults. On October 2nd of this year, this boy tried to take my daughter's personal property from her. When she wouldn't give it to him, he went after her with a pair of scissors. Scissors. Mr. Golden, you know who this boy is. We are not the only parents that have raised this alarm about this troubled young man. You are failing all our children, including this young man. And every day you keep their assailant in school, you are complicit in the endangerment of our kids. The federal protections provided to students with IEPs does not extend to the allowance of violence towards others. I believe your lack of action is fueled by nepotism, as this boy doesn't even live in Williamson County, but his family works for the school district. This has gone on far too long. We demand action in this matter.
Mr. Golden, I'm speaking on behalf of my child and the other children and parents that have been deeply affected by this and the board's inaction. Williamson County School Board is responsible for ensuring a safe learning environment, but you have failed in doing that. All of last year, my daughter was subject to witnessing this child's violent outbursts, attacks, behavioral issues, and constant disruptions. And when I walked into her classroom this year and saw that this child's name was on the desk, what was supposed to be a new year filled with excitement was only met with fear and anxiety. I received 3 emails within a matter of a few weeks regarding this student putting his hands on my daughter and started hearing from other parents regarding the same. My child's only option was to switch classrooms because the other child was protected by policies and laws. Assault is being protected, and you have been allowing it for a year and a half, sir. We have a running list from parents involving this student, and I just received 5 more today when they found out about us coming to this meeting tonight. How many emails must it take for you to receive to protect our kids from assault? Williamson County Schools, 9+ ratings in education, but you are failing our children in their basic right to protection and a safe learning environment. This is not politics. This is not placating. This is real life. Please do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. John Paul Kukulka.
Chairman of the board, faculty members, and attendees. My name is John Paul Kukulka, and I'm currently a junior at Ravenwood High School here in Williamson County. I appreciate the opportunity the board has granted to me to speak tonight regarding the proposed updates to Williamson County Schools Policy 6312. We understand its goals to encourage in-person engagement, reduce distractions, and maintain a learning-centered environment. However, I and the students here tonight believe that Policy 6312, as written, creates deeper concerns, unintended consequences, and significant trade-offs. In today's world, smartphones are not merely entertainment devices, they are essential communication tools. For some, they are the only means of checking in with parents juggling multiple jobs or coordinating care for younger siblings. Policies that restrict access to these communications place students, especially those who support their households, at a disadvantage. I want to address something that makes Williamson County truly stand out. I take great pride in attending a district that has repeatedly put student safety first. When legislature proposed a measure that would allow teachers to carry firearms, Williamson County did something courageous. It said no. It chose a path grounded in responsibility, caution, and care for the well-being of every child. That decision showed students like me that our leaders value safety, and I ask that the same thoughtful, student-centered approach be applied to this policy. However, there is a deeper and more urgent concern: safety. Allow me to place you in the shoes of Sonia Turner, a mother whose experience mirrors the parents and fears across the country. On Wednesday, September 4th, Miss Turner had been home for no more than 1 hour when she received a terrifying message from her daughter, Abby, a sophomore. There's a real lockdown. I heard shots, but I don't know anymore. Like any parent, she acted immediately, calling her husband, praying with them, and trying to keep them calm. But soon after, her youngest daughter, Isabella, sent one last message: "I love you, Mommy, I'm scared." Moments later, teachers confiscated her phone, severing the only connection this mother had to her children as the situation unfolded. The Turner children survived, but these agonizing minutes during which a parent didn't know if her child was alive, should make you all reflect. School shootings are real, lockdowns are real, and the parents and the fears they feel in these moments are real. I ask every parent in this room, would you want your child's last message to you taken away? Phones are not the problem. The misuse of phones is the problem, and misuse can be addressed through reasonable balance policy, not an outright ban. We can promote engagement and reduce distractions without sacrificing safety, communication, or the fundamental trust between students and the adults responsible for us. Williamson County has always prided itself on excellence, not just academically, but in supporting the well-being of students across the county. Policy 6312 does not reflect that legacy. I urge the board to reconsider, to listen to students and families, and to revise this policy into one that protects learning and us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next two speakers, Terry Williams and Brad Davis.
Mr. Golden and the Williamson County Board. I'm a mom of 5, one of whom is a senior at Independence High School. I'm also talking about the bell-to-bell proposal. A 2023 report by Common Sense Media revealed that 41% of 13 to 17-year-olds had seen images of nudity or sexual acts online during the school day, including on personal devices, their classmates' personal devices, and school-issued devices. 58% of the respondents came across these explicit images accidentally. According to an April 2025 GetNux report, 60% of teenagers have sent nudes at least once. 30% did not report due to embarrassment or fear of the repercussions. 18% do not tell their parents. Girls report 69% incidents in sending a sext compared to 31% of boys. 13% of teens have shared sex with friends and classmates. Aligning with these recent statistics, my 17-year-old senior daughter has been the victim of receiving unsolicited sexting images via Snapchat from male classmates at Independence High School dozens of times in the past year. Thankfully, she is now speaking up to trusted adults and therapists and sharing her experience toward healing. She also made the decision on her own to remove Snapchat and other social media from her phone, but the potential to view explicit content on classmates' phones at school has not diminished. Despite the new WCS policy prohibiting phone usage in class time for grades 9 through 12, personal phone usage is currently allowed in every class in my daughter's schedule at IHS, as recently as Friday. I can also verify that she's communicating with students at Page High School during their class time, as I've seen the videos of those kids in their classrooms during class time. What is preventing our high schools from following WCS policy and Tennessee state law? Could an away for the day phone policy alleviate the teacher's responsibility of monitoring phones during teaching time? Or would adding a phone monitor who roams each classroom and lunch to monitor digital content be helpful to follow the current policy? The secretive design of Snapchat and similar apps complicates monitoring individual phones, especially for parents like me who, despite our own exhaustive monitoring, are still competing with AI, coaching our children around our safeguards. I know that having an away for the day habit in school would not eliminate the risk of sexting from our kids' lives, but it could give the kids a barrier from it for the school hours when parents cannot be with them. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
This is the 4th consecutive month I've addressed you seeking to understand why students with a history of violence who've threatened to murder our children are seemingly exempt from going to the Alternative Learning Center as state law requires. I want to be clear, I'm not here to demand justice for what my daughter and 3 of her friends went through last year. I'm here to make sure that no student ever has to face what they did. And I'm not talking about the fact that they were bullied, attacked, and their lives were threatened. I'm talking about the horror of them having to face the bully who said he wanted to kill them and see their heads on spikes each day at school. They saw him each day at school, seeming to get away with it, and appearing to be immune from the very reasonable and appropriate consequence that death threats warrant. Is the board aware that my daughter's incident last year wasn't isolated? Are you guys aware that similar mass casualty threats happened in at least 33% of Nolensville schools last year? This is according to parents who've reached out to me over the last few months. And guess what? Of all the parents who reached out to me, none of the kids who made those threats were sent to alternative school. So now, in addition to my initial question, I'm asking another. Why are these incidents being swept under the rug? What decision led to parents not being notified that a mass casualty threat was made at their child's school by a violent student? Also, why are these incidents being kept from the media In August last year, a reporter from WKRN Channel 2 reached out asking for an interview. I agreed, and the reporter then emailed all the board members asking for confirmation of the story. She wasn't asking for the child's name, age, school they went to, or any kind of personal information that would have been identifiable and would violate federal privacy laws. She just wanted to know that lives were threatened in Williamson County Schools last year. 3 board members have reached out and have said that within 30 minutes of receiving the email from the reporter, they got an email from WCS saying not to talk to the media about this event. I have no idea what led to these decisions or who they were intended to protect, but it's clear they were not meant to protect the victims of bullying, violence, and death threats. This needs to change, because if it doesn't, it's not a matter of if a mass casualty event happens in our schools, it's when. So what's at stake for us as leaders of community if we fail to act, continue sticking our head in the sand and pretending this is not an issue? Thank you.
Thank you. Next 2 speakers are Brian Bowman and Scott Selman.
Good evening. My name is Brian Bowman. I'm a father of 2 students currently enrolled in Williamson County Schools, and I've been a resident of Williamson County for over 16 years. In fact, my family moved here from Nashville so that our kids could be in this school system, and we're very happy about that. I'm here this evening to respectfully encourage you to reconsider the amendment to the use of wireless communication devices policy that passed at the October 20 meeting. While I understand and fully support the need for limited devices during class time instruction, not permitting high school students to use the devices during lunch or breaks is overly restrictive. While not endorsing the increased degree to which our society is reliant on technology, the use of wireless communication devices has become a normal part of the human experience and something our children must at some point learn. Frankly, I think the school board is missing an opportunity to fulfill their mission in educating our children. Rather than fully banning the use of these devices, why not establish a policy that seeks to teach children how to use the devices responsibly and then administer the policy, including accountability for irresponsible use? These devices are a tool, and a tool that our children need to learn how to use responsibly in an educational setting. I understand the valid argument that allowing the devices during lunch and breaks may result in some students behaving irresponsibly. But I ask you to consider the following question. At what point do we stop punishing students who behave responsibly in order to prevent the possible irresponsible behavior of some students? Yes, some students will behave irresponsibly. That's why the policy should enable a system of responsible behavior with the use of accountability. The amended policy removes the opportunity to learn responsible behavior. Prior to implementation, I urge the school board to reconsider this amendment and return to the policy currently enforced. A better society is one in which schools focus on teaching our children how to effectively use technology, not one in which prohibits its use. I respect you as board members and thank you for consideration and for your service to the community and especially to our children. I want to close with a statement from one of your students. Here it is. Schools are meant to teach kids and teenagers. They need to learn how to be responsible, and that's never going to happen if they don't have a chance to try to be responsible. If you continue to make stricter rules, even more people will try to break them because they want freedom. Each student should be trusted with their phones and use them responsibly until they do not on a few occasions, and then the rest of the semester they should not be trusted for good reason. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Scott Selman. Earlier this semester, my 18-year-old intellectually impaired daughter was involved in an incident in her self-contained classroom at Summit High School. she took a used, discarded vape she had found on the street to school to show a friend. That friend also brought a vape, used it in class, then asked our daughter to charge it for her after it had died. This all occurred in a self-contained special education class of 6 to 10 students, and it went unnoticed by the adult that was in the room at the time. The friend's vape ended up testing positive for THC, unknowingly to my daughter. In the subsequent investigation, our intellectually disabled daughter was questioned in an office with 2 assistant principals and 2 school resource officers. There was no one there to support her at all. Her mother and I, as her parents, were only contacted after the fact, and after our daughter had been legally charged with possession, something that could haunt her for the rest of her life. We feel there were several issues with the way this was handled. Conversations with the school administration proved fruitless, so my wife and I reached out to Mr. Golden. After a couple of weeks of no response, we enlisted an advocacy group to assist with our concerns. Only after a formal letter from this group did we receive a response from the superintendent's office. And the response was only at that time that an investigation would be performed. My wife met with Vicki Hall 2 weeks later, at which time she was promised a response. After 4 weeks went by and repeated attempts to elicit a response from the office, we sent an open email to the school board. 2 days later, we received a response that the investigation would conclude soon. To no one's surprise, the investigation yielded no accountability for anyone at the school. Our issues with the response to our request are that at every turn, we have been met with resistance instead of a desire to get better, and a lack of transparency instead of a spirit of collaboration. Therefore, we ask a couple of things. Increase supervision in the special needs classrooms in Williamson County to prevent illegal drugs from being vaped in class and to prevent illegal drugs being given to other students. A specific review of district policies regarding the questioning and searching of students with cognitive impairments. This is the least that can be done to assist special education students under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This vulnerable population of students deserves better. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our final 2 speakers are Ashwika Chitreddy and Aileen Wright.
Good evening. My name is Ashwika Chitreddy. I'm a senior at Ravenwood High School, and I'll keep this pretty simple. We're told that the phone ban exists to keep students focused, present, and engaged. If that's true, then I think we should all be honest about something. Focus and presence don't magically become less important when you turn 18. If phones really take away from engagement, then that applies here too. During these meetings, during these discussions, during the moments where we're supposed to be modeling what we expect from students. You cannot call it a distraction in the classroom during lunch and a convenience in this room to use a phone. Therefore, I believe we should expand and set this policy to apply towards Williamson County board meetings as well. You may want to use your phone because of a family emergency. Let me ask you all, do you all want to calmly wait at home when you receive an email that your child's school is in a school shooting? No, there are emergencies. Emergencies exist, but we can't have that. You may want to use it if you're in danger. You may want to use it in your break time. Yet, this double standard sets a louder message than any policy ever will. Today, I stand, and all I'm asking for is consistency. If we are setting an expectation for students, then the adults leading them should be the first ones to show what that looks like. This speech stands as the epitome and the success of the education that I've received from Williamson County schools. I've been here since 3rd grade. Yet the funniest part is that I wrote this entire speech all on my phone. Pretty short. That's all I have to say. Thank you, guys.
Good evening. I'm Aileen Wright, a physician who researches technology in healthcare and a mother of 4. I'm here in strong support of the new wireless communications policy, including its bell-to-bell and away and off-the-body standards. In some ways, this might seem like a no-brainer, since when breaks are phone-free, students move more and interact more. When phones are allowed, many, not all, but many sit, scroll, and withdraw. And a straightforward policy is way simpler to enforce. But I want to acknowledge a legitimate question. Wouldn't giving students the chance to use phones during lunch give them a break? A chance to text mom, deal with the logistics, decompress, and return to class refreshed? After all, it's their free time. As a parent, I wish the answer were yes. I wish smartphones could add convenience and help with logistics like they do without creating a dozen more problems for every problem they solve. Unfortunately, the last decade tells a different story. We've seen a 40% rise in persistent sadness and hopelessness among high school students, and a 57% increase in suicide rates. Academically, after decades of gains, U.S. test scores began to decline, not in 2020, but around 2012, the same time smartphones became universal. So what do smartphones do to the adolescent brain during lunch break? We know from brain imaging studies that they activate the same reward pathways we see in gambling and drug addictions. As users pull the screen down to refresh a feed, it's like that slot machine lever. The brain is looking for unpredictable bursts of dopamine. And it turns out adolescents are especially vulnerable. Their brains are undergoing significant structural and functional reorganization. And then the bell rings. And suddenly, they're asked to switch from a high-reward, high-stimulation state to a low-reward, high-effort task, like algebra. We're asking them to fall off of a dopamine cliff straight into class. So the problem isn't just the 30 minutes at lunch, it's the 3 hours after lunch. We already know the harms of adolescent smartphone usage: cyberbullying, unhealthy comparisons, inappropriate pictures taken of other students, and a quarter or more of teens admitting to seeing pornography during the school day. This is happening at school, on school hours, at lunch, in the hallways on the way to lunch, in unsupervised areas of the school, because the opportunity's there. And I have this image stuck in my mind of one of the first times, years ago, I observed a teen scrolling on a phone. I was eating lunch at the Adventure Science Center with my kids, and there was a girl, she looked to be about 15, sitting alone on the floor, and I just happened to see her screen, and she was scrolling through hundreds and hundreds of videos really fast. In seconds, each video flashed sexualized images of girls her age parading around in revealing outfits. I remember thinking, this is her lunchtime. This is what's shaping her understanding of herself, her peers, and her world. A true bell-to-bell away and off the body policy is not without sacrifices. It's less convenient. We have to contact the school office, we have to plan ahead, but it creates the best possible environment for learning, for mental health, and for our kids to develop the crucial face-to-face skills that lead to genuine human connection.
Time.
So thank you for doing the difficult, necessary work of creating policy that clears the path for our students to learn and thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you to all of our speakers. Really appreciate you being here and sharing your views. Our next item, board members, is approval of our agenda. Can I get a motion in a second? Thank you. We'll do this by voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda is approved. We will now move to our consent agenda. I want to make a note that at the request of a couple of board members, policy 4.401 was moved off the consent agenda. And you'll notice it's been moved down to new business item D. So just make a note of that. So with that removed, we will move to approval of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion and a second? Thank you. We'll do this by voice vote as well. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved, and with that vote, we approve the following items. Approval of the October 20th, 2025 school board meeting minutes. Approval of the 2025-26 hearing officers. Approval of LEA compliance report. Approval of TISA accountability report. Approval of the request to lease the cafeteria at Page High School by Oak Hollow Church of Christ. Approval of building model request, Heritage Middle School storage building. Approval of building model request, Mill Creek Elementary School shade structure. Approval of building model request, Page High School locker room renovation. And the recommendation for field trip fee requests. Next item on the agenda is communications to the board. Superintendent's report, Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, board members, for your work. I know, of course, we had a work session last week. I will speak to that just briefly in just a second. I do usually make it a point to address the comments that our public commenters make. I want to first speak to students with disabilities and how we communicate, how we serve students with disabilities. I think we have some room to grow in how we communicate, not just the parameters, but the tools that we have in serving students with disabilities, and especially in communicating when a concern arises. So I want to make sure you all as board members know that our leadership team has spoken to that and has a commitment to that, to communicate more thoroughly. With that, one of the threshold comments we often say is, while we can't speak to a particular child, and we're going to make sure that we do share more in a general sense, even though we can't speak to a particular child's issue with a parent of someone else's child. Every child deserves respect. Every child deserves good service, and we want to make sure that we're doing that every day. Also, Mr. Chair, I want to thank those individuals who made public comments, especially, of course, thank our students who come and speak. Each one had their unique thoughts, and of course, there were thoughts that opposed that as well. I will say, as you know, board members, you have had those same thoughts in that debate that we've been going through multiple board meetings. And I want to thank you for that good civil debate that you've been having with each other through this discussion process. Also related to that, the most recent board work session we had, you had a couple of presentations from school administration. One was a discussion of the most recent work of our screen time committee. Board members, as you know, I'm going to let the folks in the audience know that a few months ago, starting in late spring and then into early fall, our screen time committee aimed first at speaking to cell phone usage by our students. And your discussion now is a product of that work that they did early. Currently, as you know, they have shifted their work and their discussion to school devices and providing data to the committee and analyzing the amount of time that students spend on their devices while in school for school purposes. And that work is ongoing. You will be getting some information in the next few months from them as we work towards a goal this spring of having some recommendations for screen time for WCS work related to that. As you all know, there are conflicting needs. I specifically mentioned some of the expectations the state has for testing that we expect to come up versus the need to make sure that there is interaction among our students with our teachers in the context of instruction. And you may recall Dr. Allen specifically mentioning something to the effect, and Dr. Allen, I'm not going to get your quote exactly right, that our number one focus is in our instructional time, our primary resources, and that, for example, apps are only used or electronic assistance is only used when it's established that the depth and complexity of what's being presented can't be presented with the core content. On that point, we also spoke to the most recent discussion and planning for the textbook selection process, the core content adoption process that the state is having us go through this year for many of our college and career technical education classes and our health classes. As you all know, that's a relatively small adoption compared to some of our other years. You got a presentation on that. The state has published, if I'm not mistaken, just right before that work session last week, the list of textbooks that the state board will be voting on in a few weeks. And so we have that preliminary look. There are a number of books related to those particular classes, but it has given us the ability to at least get started just a bit on looking at some of those books as we wait for the State Board of Education to give us a selection process. Tonight, we have on the board agenda the textbook selection policy with some proposed changes related to our experience in the past year. Just as a reminder also, especially for the folks who are here, this year is a relatively small adoption. Next year, we will be going through the social studies adoption process, which is a very significant, very detailed process with a lot of volume of textbooks. So I do encourage folks to keep your eye on that, especially in the context of how those screen time committee work interacts with the materials. Again, thank you folks for coming and speak to us. And related to that, I think if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Chair, Ms. Carol Birdsong is here, and she is going to share some student and staff spotlights.
Well, thank you, Mr. Golden. Board members, yes, I am. And we are celebrating all across the county tonight, y'all. And we are going to start with a national award coming out of Fairview High School. This is Mason Hickman. He is the national winner in the 2025 Student Television Network Challenge. His teacher is Rob Gregory. You guys, we had 14 students recently earn a perfect score on the ACT, representing 8 of our high schools. So, yes, this is Natalie Chow from Brentwood High School. This is Cole Claybrook, also from Brentwood High School. Matthew Greer, Brentwood High School. Luke Hadley, Brentwood High School. Joseph Johnson, Brentwood. Aiden Crothmer, Brentwood High School. From Centennial, Jameson Koss, also from Centennial, Chloe Tapperson. From Franklin High School, James Fruhl. From Fairview High School, Leah Colcutt. From Independence High School, Coleman Root. From Page High School, Gavin Thayer. From Ravenwood High School, Justin Horrell. From Summit High School, Soren McDaniel. And from Page High School, this is your Page High Future Farmers of America team that won the state title in land evaluation. Their teacher is Shanna Botiller. All right, let's go to sports, y'all. Summit High School, your TSSAA state volleyball champions. Warren Riker is their coach. We have a lot of cheerleaders to celebrate. Thompson Station Middle School, TSSAA Game Day State Champs. In the TSSAA Large Varsity State Champs, this is Brentwood High's cheer squad. Centennial High's cheer squad, TSSAA Game Day Small Varsity State Champs. Ravenwood High School, TSSAA Small Varsity State Champs. Brentwood High School in dance. This is their dance team, TSSAA Large Varsity Jazz State Champs. Now, let's talk cross country. Brentwood High School is your TSSAA Girls Class 3A state champion. And then let's go across town to Independence High School. This is your TSSAA Boys Class 3A cross country state championship team. Now, for some staff spotlights, we have Superintendent Jason Golden, who was honored with the TSSAA 2025 AF Bridges School System Administrator of the Year for the Middle Tennessee area. And also receiving recognition, Andrew Hedges from Thompson Station Middle School, who earned the TSSAA 2025 AF Bridges School System Official of the Year in the Middle Tennessee area. Those are your school student and staff spotlights for November. Congratulations.
Thank you, Carol. And Mr. Chair, if I may, I want to mention a couple things. One, I had a short conversation with a teacher at one of our high schools who happened not to have had a student with a 36 in this batch of ACT, and she pointed something out along the lines of, "We had 8 34s. Why don't you celebrate that?" And I will tell you, it did remind me that of what we talked about last month at our board meeting when I showed you that scatter plot from the state and the TVAS system. Our students as a whole do an incredible job. We are focused this year especially on students with unique learning needs to grow them. Just as a reminder, that's something we're talking about. But those doors that are opening for our students, whether they get a 34 or a 24 or a 36, are something that we constantly have an effort on. Final thing, Mr. Chair, I want to mention, Andrew Hedges was just celebrated there at that same event I attended. He is a middle school teacher who was celebrated as the official of the year for our region. I want to point that out. We have a middle school teacher who's going to officiate high school games after hours. There is a basic shortage of officials in Tennessee. So every time we have an opportunity to celebrate those who serve in that way, I think it's wise to celebrate them. So with that, Mr. Chair, that's my report.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on your award.
Thank you.
Okay, we don't have a board chair report tonight, so we can move right into new business. Although I wanted to briefly recognize, I think I saw some scouts in the audience. Are some scouts here? You all want to stand up, be recognized? Thanks for being here. All right, our first item of new business is approval of the 5-year capital improvement plan. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you all know, we presented our draft 5-year capital plan prior to our October meeting to give you all time to process through that. You all made a handful of suggestions, especially with respect to the proposed dates for new school constructions. We actually moved one or two of those a little bit further down based on the feedback we had from you. I do want to mention specifically the discussion we had related to our enrollment numbers and that document that includes a heat map of our schools, and mention one other piece that we talked about at our work session. We do know that more likely than not, we will need to do a little bit of rezoning before we actually start construction on another school, largely because we have seen a slight decrease in the last 2 years of our total student enrollment, less than 1%. But our experience tells us making sure that those schools are balanced with zoning is an important first step prior to making a request of county government. Finally, I want to mention related to that 5-year capital plan, that first column is what we intend to make a request of the county commission at some point during this budget year, based on what county administration tells us about how they might propose to fund it if the county commission approves. And second, the second column, the intent to fund needed, just as a reminder, those new buildings that are on our 5-year capital plan that are scheduled to open as early as fall of 2030, still a number of years out, we'll get one more discussion at this board next year before we actually propose funding. Certainly open to any additional questions you all may have, and Mr. King, our Assistant Superintendent for Operations, is here as well.
All right, we have a motion. We now have a second, so it's on the floor. Any questions or comments for Mr. Golden? Ms. Clements?
I just wanted to thank how you guys handled this process this year. I know in years past it just appeared on our November agenda, and I really appreciate having a 2-month process on this so we could take time to look at this, and I think you guys have done a really good job. I know that in the 20-teens we were gangbusters and getting lots of new students every year, and that has kind of changed over the last 4 or 5 years, and so I think you guys have done a really thoughtful process on that, so I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Galbraith?
Yes, I guess, Mr. Golden, thank you for making the adjustment. So after our question came up about what the county commission can actually use the education impact fee money for, I guess it kind of brings into, I guess I was looking at the section for new buildings and additions, and I guess maybe Bobby knows more about the education impact fee than anybody, but the Performing Arts Center probably wouldn't be eligible for that, maybe.
Yeah, that's correct. If they had classrooms that were going to be part of it,
it usually
then
does.
it would.
I think we got them. I think we got some of them eligible for that actually just for that reason. Is that right, Jason?
We actually did early on. For example, the very first pack that we built was at Hillsborough School, and we added 2 classrooms to it. We're going to be going through that process. This particular one is for Spring Station Middle School, which for those of you who've been to the building, you know this. That is the last school that has a stage that opens up into the cafeteria. I take that back. Grassland Middle still has one, but we actually have a performing arts center for that. Brian, you were about to correct me on one. But we built a new pack for Grassland Middle, even though they still had that stage overlooking their cafeteria. I will tell you, for what it's worth, if county government asks us about that, we'll make sure we gather data related to what growth has happened since that building was built. But as Mr. Cook says, generally speaking, it has to be somehow tied to growth.
Great. So, but other than that, I thank you. But that's just a really clean addition to the things that obviously the Performing Arts Center excluded just because we're doing that with all of our middle schools, just like we have the rest of them. But these are very clearly delineated as growth versus not, and with everything, our growth is where the actual building, the vote to approve that is always going to be contingent upon whether we need it or not. So,
and if I may mention one other thing that was actually publicly mentioned at one point, it's been months at a county commission meeting. The Triple J project that they've been working on for a number of years now for, they call it juvenile justice and judiciary. The Alternative Learning Center, or ALC, is part of that. They have had some specific discussion related to potentially funding that out of the fund because it is designed to increase capacity compared to its current state.
Thank you.
Mr. Cash?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank Brian King and his staff for staying on top of this, letting us know where the growth's at and, everything that goes along with it. What's nice about this plan is we can make adjustments to it. And a lot of times people don't like to see change, but it's got to occur with zoning, especially in the movement of children somewhat. I just wanted to ask you, Mr. Golden, with the large amount of money in the fund through, the 1%, 1.5% tax we voted on for schools, why can't more of that money be released?
So Mr. Cook may be the one to speak to that specifically. When the county government approved the impact fee, they based it on a fundamental, and Bobby, I don't know if it's a particular law or a regulation, that in that window of time allowed that, but the impact of growth had to be tied to the spending of that fund because it was an impact fee for new folks. So there was a 0.5-cent sales tax increase about 10 years ago or so. That does go. A portion of that does go to schools and a portion goes to municipalities, and that goes towards our operating fund. But the impact fee for new construction has to be tied to growth. And Mr. Cook, Rachel, Ms. Farmer, if certainly add anything that I might have missed related to that.
Got it.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add.
Well, I thank you for that, but there's a huge bucket of money there.
Yeah, there is. About $97 million right now.
That's right, sitting.
Yep.
And regardless of whether or not children are moving in at the rate they were at one time, we can all see growth happening. There's plenty of projects that money could be used for. And I'm just saying, I guess someone's going to have to start asking that question.
Yep.
We struggle and go through budget after budget and check everything, every line item, and struggle to get raises for our workers and our teachers. And we've got $97 million sitting in a bucket.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it. I don't think it's fair.
Well, county government is the decision maker on it.
Well, I understand
and,
that.
and they're bound by those restrictions. I will tell you one of the focus points we've had with them is when we make those capital requests, we give them as much detail as possible to open that door for them. I will tell you, generally speaking, if they're able to use this fund, that saves them from, for example, going to the bond market.
Sure.
Which in turn might save them some interest at the county level.
Thank you, Mr. Golden.
Dr. Johnson?
I mean, would growth in District 5 be justification to start tapping into some of that money?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And yeah, as I understand it from their description, regional growth is still growth. It's not countywide. As you all know, we have some areas that are growing and some areas that are reducing.
So what's the process to get that going? Like, do we have to put it in this plan, or is there another process?
We are not at all the decision makers on how county government funds our capital requests. So we make a request for capital of them. We encourage them. Like, for example, I might say, hey, if you all are struggling with whether to approve this, this might be something that you can use that impact fee for. But ultimately, the process is, number one, the 5-year capital plan. Number two, when the time comes based on our proposed construction schedule, give them a request for funding, and then they debate whether they can afford to fund it based on the available funds.
So, I mean, what I'm thinking is moving up like the middle school over on Split Log, just because Page Middle is pretty much at 100%. Mill Creek Middle's at 117% capacity. Would I need to make a motion to change that? Or okay. So I make a motion to amend moving the middle school Split Log property ITF of $17 million from next year to this year. So, like, moving all that up. And trying to use the education impact fee. Yeah, I know, that's their decision, but I can add that.
So, one thing I would raise on that, thinking back to our discussion at the work session, I asked the question about how far into a fiscal year can you get before you're beyond the point of being able to actually go to the bond market and fund something and get something started. I don't know, Mr. Golden, how realistic is it that if we move that into the current fiscal year, that's an ITF that we could realistically get funded?
I'm going to ask Ms. Farmer to speak to that. She's had more discussions with the finance department at the county with their traditional bond schedule.
Currently, they are going in the month of October, November, in that time frame, and so as long as they had it before them, they'll and approve an intent to fund before September. It would be plausible that it could be done. So you could, and yes, you could go ahead and move it up, and we could make the request. We'll bring this 5-year capital plan to the county commission starting in January before the committees, and then they look at it in total with the other budget requests that we have. And so then they may hold an intent to fund until later to try to lay out all of the expenditures related to capital before they approve anything. But you could, and it would be in time for next year because they've already gone for this year.
So it would be a scenario where we submit the request in this current fiscal year, but it wouldn't be able to be funded until the next fiscal year.
Correct.
So how do we differentiate that and how we allocate these columns? Is it an ITF that is funded or an ITF that's requested?
Well, the ITF is an intent to fund, and the process we go through is when we make a request of intent to fund, if it's approved by the county commission, we take action towards our construction schedule in reliance on that commission vote. And then we notify them when we'll need funding, and they decide when to fund based on that schedule. So the intent to fund, for example, with us having a July 1st year, if we move the intent to fund to this year, We would probably be looking at early summer to make that request based on their budget process. That's often what they'll say, something along the lines of, hey, make sure we have this information consistent with our budget process, maybe May or June. And then we would have our construction team look at the schedule, roll it back a year, and back map the schedule for when we would need the money.
Dr. Johnson.
And just so I'm clear, so with this current ask of intent to fund 26-27, it technically would not even be funded till 27-28. Is that because it goes before them in January?
Well, it would be based on our back mapping schedule of opening that middle school in 2031. So for what it's worth, my process of your request to move this up would potentially, did I have it wrong? If I missed a column? 2030. Thank you. I slid down as I was going from one end to the other. We would back map our construction schedule with a proposed opening in the fall of 29 if this passed, and then get them the request based on that.
So you have a motion on the floor to move the let me make sure I get this right, the $17 million for the middle school on the split log property from the 2026-27 column up to the 25-26 column. Is that correct? All right. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Galbraith. Any further discussion or questions on that? Mr. Beasley?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Golden, do you recommend approval for this?
Yes, and here's why. You all will revisit this one more time before we actually vote anyway, because you will actually have to vote on the intent to fund. This will give us an opportunity to do the work and prepare a schedule for backwards mapping. And we'll have, we should have a projection on enrollment based on this coming budget year by then. I can't guarantee ultimately that we're going to recommend that at this point, but this could facilitate that.
Any further questions on the amendment? Mr. Galbraith?
I guess I just want to make it clear, or just to be clear, because I'm not. So is the request to move the 17 million into the current, move everything over a column, start it in the current 25-26 fiscal year, which, I mean, if we're asking, I know we're not telling them how to fund, but they could necessarily fund that with impact fee funds and wouldn't have to go to bond market. So that necessarily doesn't have to wait until November, or wait until another budget. But so the question, I mean, I guess the question is, knowing where we are, middle school capacity wise, and this is, I mean, what the pictures showed and the data showed, I guess and given the fact that we're already having to make this projection out 3 years out or 4 years out, what's the likelihood you're not going to see any data before the summer, right?
That's correct. We'll have projections for this budget year.
Right.
We won't have actual data until late summer.
And until you can commit to building the whole school, it's not gonna make any sense to do the site work. We talked about that, all that site work. You're not going to do that unless you're ready to move, right?
We may be able to do some of the site work before we're ready to build, because it is that particular site, as we discussed at the work session, has a lot of rock. One of the reasons that we have 17 million on this one compared to 3 million on some of the others is because it's more than just architectural work. So we could do architectural design if we had earlier funding, which might have the potential to ease the process of construction And then I think we could do some site work a little bit early. Brian, could you speak to that?
Yes, sir. That's exactly what we would do with the 17 million would be the site work and the engineering and design. Yes, sir.
I mean, I was already looking at this timeline and just wondering, Brian, why it's slated for fall of 30 when our last request is going to be with an ITF. Let's just say that we were assuming that it would be requested that in the bond market in October, November of 28. But then we're not proposing. Are we just thinking that we're trying to be conservative on the timeline and not say, okay, that might only be like 10 months and we don't want to cut it close?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I don't. I mean, I'm open. To me, if you're willing to go and say, hey, we've looked at the data. We're going to need this school. We pushed it back 6 years already. We're going forward in the fall, and maybe there's a question of whether we're going to ask for it next fall. We might push it back one more. But if it's a when rather than if, then I'm okay with going ahead and getting the site work done. If you're not convinced that we're going to need it, and it's not just a question of timing, then I think we wait until next year and we go on the 2030 time frame. And I've been trying to get this school for a long time, but I'm definitely sympathetic to Margie's request. But that's really my question of you, is whether or not you would actually ask for that site work to be done.
Well, we actually had this discussion administratively before we put this together. Based on what we've seen these last 2 years, we have seen a slight increase in enrollment at the middle school level. We do believe that it is a win, but we had projected out, let's give it one more year. What we're talking about now is giving it 7 more months and revisiting it with the board one more time before we come with the intent to fund. And so because of that, I think it's going to be fine and appropriate for us to do that. Another reason for this is the county's purpose for having the 5-year capital plan is for their bond market and for their bond rating to let those companies that evaluate their bond rating know what might be coming. All things being equal, we are better off posting something a little early and doing it later than we are the reverse. Posting something late and doing it early, because it shows that we're planning in more consistent. So I don't see a substantial amount of harm in bringing it early for those 2 reasons, because you all are going to revisit it one more time before we actually make the request, and because from a planning perspective, it doesn't indicate that we're bringing something without having known it was coming.
Sure. Sounds good.
Mr. Cash?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got one more question for Mr. Golden. We're increasing in students in middle and high school and decreasing in elementary school.
That is correct.
Okay, with very little growth or no growth, what's the chances of building a school and have it empty out?
That's still a possibility. We see that in a lot of communities where there's been a stabilization of growth, and I will say regionally we're starting to see that, right? As folks are not selling in particular parts of the county, that is a possibility, and that's why we need to be thoughtful before we actually spend.
Thank you.
I think one of the key points that Ms. Farmer made is that the ITF could go in the spring to the county commission. They're under no obligation to fund it or approve it.
That's right.
They can sit on it for some period of time until circumstances change. So, but the point of this motion is getting it in the queue, right? Any other questions or comments on the amendment? All right, we can proceed to a vote on the amendment.
The vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Okay, the amendment carries. So that item has been moved up 1 year on the calendar or the plan. So we're now back on the original capital plan as amended. Any further questions? Mr. Bostic.
I just have a question kind of related to this. So, Margie brings a good point. I'm glad we passed that and everything. I'm talking about growth as far as, building new schools for growth impact. But I know in my district in Fairview, and we have a school on there for a new elementary school. How does the commission or whoever look at that as far as like needs to use that impact fee fund for, updating or replacing old schools? Because Fairview Elementary, it's our oldest school in the county. I mean, it's a rough building, especially if you go and visit any one of these other ones. I mean, it's rough. So I just, I'd hate to see that keep getting pushed back a little bit, but I don't know. Thoughts on that? And do you remember the exact date when it was built?
That building, Fairview Elementary, actually opened in 1962, if I'm not mistaken.
1 or 2.
What, 61 or 2? Yeah. It does look very different. You are correct.
Yeah.
It looks like a school, a late 50s, early 60s elementary school. We do have that on the 5-year capital plan. You all may recall when we spoke to this last month in October, we've started conversations with some of the developers in the Fairview area to set aside some land. What we are projecting we do with Fairview Elementary is, to your point, replace and enlarge. In other words, build a larger school that can cover that zone and then rezone appropriately when it opens, but have a school with a higher capacity. Again, we're not the decision makers, but based on my understanding of the impact fee, if there is an increase in capacity, they can use a portion of that funding to fund in part that school that is that combo of replacing and growth.
Gotcha.
So that may facilitate that when the time comes.
Yeah. I just know, like, the original plan, just I guess for the public or anybody that didn't know, was to build like a whole additional elementary school, correct? And then that's now been revised to not build an additional, but
that's correct,
slightly larger and replace Fairview Elementary, which I think is needed. So I mean, just by the time we're looking at maybe getting that done, it's like this is going to be a 70-year-old building.
Yeah, it will still take a number of years.
Yeah,
you're correct.
So I'd just like to keep that in the forefront as we're thinking through all these things, because it is. I'd encourage people to go visit some of these nice newer ones, and then go visit that one and just see the difference, what people are working in and where kids are going to.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we're ready to vote on the capital plan as amended.
The vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Okay, the plan is approved. Next item is approval of the 2026-27 calendar with early release and late start days, and the 2027-28 calendar. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have those two calendars before you. Just as a reminder, we are here at the second year of our proposal to have two years worth of calendars. As you know, Dr. Lee Webb, who chaired our calendar committee that include parent, teacher, and administrator representation, gave you these proposals and shared a little bit of detail with it. I want to make a couple of comments related to that just as a reminder. For this coming year, which is 2026-27, it includes the proposed late start, early release days. Also, the substantial difference in the following year's calendar, 27-28, includes the presidential primary in spring of 28. So just you get a visual of how many years out we're projecting these calendars may ultimately go. We'll be dealing with the presidential primary before these proposed calendars are out. So we are making it a point not to be open on those larger election days. Final point I want to make is what we have heard from our families fairly consistently is our structure of the holidays are working pretty well. You all know that we work towards expanding their Thanksgiving break period and then their winter break, to surround Christmas with full days. And so we didn't have a lot of discussion about it at the work session, I suspect because you all have heard positive feedback from our families. So I do recommend approval.
All right, we get a motion and a second. Got a motion and a second. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Dr. Johnson?
I'm just going to bring up what I brought up at the work session about the graduation window, and I know that you are going to talk to the high school principals to ensure that our TSSAA athletes that compete in state don't have to choose between competition and graduation. I know it wasn't changed on here, but I know you are going to do that.
Thank you for
Just wanna
that.
say that.
And Dr. Johnson, I want to speak to that just briefly. What we are going to talk about is what days to schedule those within that window, right? That's the key.
Ms. Wyatt?
Yes, thank you. I wondered if you could just share how many of our schools are election sites. I know you mentioned being closed, so how many of our schools are used as election sites?
Mr. King, I know you had this discussion last week with the election office.
I'm pretty confident at 7. We're up to 17. Not at every election. Like this next one, which is a small one. I think it's just a handful, but your full-on elections, statewide, all that. 17 schools. Yes, ma'am. Mostly, yes, sir.
Yeah, mostly elementary, but there is a mix.
There's a couple of 2 high schools, I believe, and a couple of middle schools as well. Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we're ready to vote.
The vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Okay, the calendars are approved. All right, item C, 2 policies for first reading. First one is 3.210, naming of facilities. Mr. Golden and/or Mr. Galbraith.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have on for first reading a proposal to add some detail related to the naming of a portion of our facilities, not a substantial change to naming new schools, but portions, which includes some recommendation processes, even the potential for honorary naming through financial contributions such as colleges often do, et cetera. Do recommend approval for this to go back to policy committee for a further detailed discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on this policy on first reading? All right, we're ready to vote.
The vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Okay, that policy is approved on first reading. Second policy, 4.600, report cards and grading systems.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This proposal in blue line, which starts on page 3 of this particular policy, includes detail related to a proposed transfer of GPA recalculation for students who transfer into the district during their high school career. As you recall, one of the drivers for this was the most noticeable example that the University of Tennessee has now granted automatic admission to students who are in the top 10% of their class, and we want to make sure that we define this early and on the front end for families so that they know the impact of that GPA. We want to make sure we're fair to everybody and have that defined before the good crisis comes, when somebody's trying to decide if they have admission to some of these colleges for those bases.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, we're ready to vote.
The vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
That policy is approved on first reading. We now have two policies for second reading. The first one that, as we said earlier, was removed off the consent agenda, policy 4.401, textbooks and instructional materials.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you stated, this has gone through two readings. I do want to especially call your attention to page 1, which was part of the reason a couple of you board members asked to bring this out of the consent agenda so it can be pointed out. Line 23 of page 1 includes the ultimate landing of the policy committee that includes one board member shall be appointed to serve on the textbook selection committee and shall subscribe to the oath required by state law. And then the addition that the board member will not be a voting member. There are other changes mixed in, but I just wanted to make sure I pointed out that most substantial, most recent change.
Guys, could you scroll up, pull that up and scroll to that change on those lines that Mr. Golden pointed out?
There we go.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Galbraith?
Yes, thank you. Jason, I know Ms. Hallsbrook's sitting here, and I just wondered, based on the conversations at the policy committee, we didn't talk about it at the work session, and I think a couple of people didn't recognize that it was on consent, which is totally fine. I get that. But it made me look at this sentence again on page 2, around ex officio members and gathering information to make appropriate approval decisions about the textbook adoption committee selection, and shall not be voting members. Based on your understanding, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. How do you see that? How do you see that playing out in terms of? I get that there will be. I get that there's going to be a board member on the committee, and that. I guess what's your definition of how ex officio members are welcomed by the committee? And I say this just because I want to be clear. I thought, well, I don't know exactly where the policy committee stands on it. But I did make the point that I really don't want the rest of the board members. I get not voting. But I really don't want the rest of the board members doing anything other than observing. And I just want to make sure that that's your understanding of how this reads.
I will tell you that is my understanding, and I think there's some value in having the proverbial legislative history of our discussion related to that. As you know, I was in the county commission budget meeting when that was discussed in detail, but I will give you my opinion based on my personal experience. I am ex officio. I observe. And it's possible I might pitch in something occasionally, but I am not an active participant to the point where I am dominating the discussion. The intent of this is for those members who are voting members to be involved. Now, that's a practice issue, not a pure definition issue related to the definition of ex officio. I do want to ask Mr. Cook if he would to share his thoughts related to that ex officio term.
Yeah, I think it's quite clear that the intent here is that the ex officio member not be a voting member. Like I said, it's pretty clear that that's what the ex officio member here.
Well, I guess it's clear that they're not voting. I guess it's not so clear whether they are able to participate in conversation. So I just want to. So and I've been to both of these. Have we been to both? I've been to one. I think the first one that the only one we've had. But if we have just want to make a real life example, we have a textbook publisher coming before the board. Is this going to allow multiple board members to ask questions of the publisher?
There's nothing in this policy that would prohibit that. Your ex officio member would be able to participate in those conversations. Their limitation based on the wording is they're not voting members.
Okay, I'd like to. Well, I'm not gonna offer an amendment yet, but I want to see if anybody else is with me and thinking that that's a bad idea, and I thought it was, and my fault for not checking when it was on the consent agenda. I thought this was getting changed based on our discussion, but so just want to see if anybody else wants to change it with me.
Dr. Reeves?
Mr. Chair, this is a question for you or Superintendent Golden. Doesn't the board, even whether or not we choose to attend a committee meeting as an ex officio member, we still have that discretion to reach out to publishers and ask questions regardless, because ultimately we're voting on the curriculum.
That's my presumption, but Mr. Golden?
Yeah, mine too. There's no rule against anyone calling.
So I don't
a publisher.
necessarily share your concern. I don't think. I understand that you are concerned about a bunch of board members attending and disrupting the process, but I think we've all agreed that that one person who's being appointed to the committee is serving as our voice on the committee.
Mr. Welch?
Thank you. Yeah, Jay, I agree with you. No matter how well intentioned we are to just observe, the mere fact of our presence is disruptive, and disruptive is probably a bad word. It's a bit pejorative, but impactful is probably a better word with it. Just being in the school for whatever reason instantly sort of raises the alarm of there's a board member here and what's going on, or an event or the games, and just sort of the presence there. There's an awareness and kind of a question of why and what have you. And I think a board member speaking up and rendering a position, an opinion on something, it makes it hard for, that young 20-something teacher who's maybe a year or two out of college to then disagree and not want to do that. So I don't know what it is either, but I appreciate you bringing it up, and I think maybe, having something a little bit more in writing that we are there to observe, I don't think it's a bad idea at all. But overall with the policy, I know what you're doing on this, Tony, with wanting to get more transparent. I appreciate that. It's just that one little tweak that I have that you sort of brought up, and I'm kind of with you as well, and it's sort of been a concern in the back of my head of what is the unintended consequences. We've all seen Jurassic Park, so it's always the monster always gets out whether you want it to or not.
Mr. Cash?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The whole purpose of this was to get board members more involved in the process. Whether we have, we should be able to sit down and, ask teachers questions, so we have a better understanding of what they're getting into. I met with groups of teachers, and they're constantly asking me, "Why didn't you ask us?" When? I can't just call them at home and ask them a question about it. I can't walk into a school and say, "Hey, I need to talk to the teachers on this committee," and ask them a few questions. So if we're not allowed to speak And I don't mean take over the meeting, but ask a simple question. You know, a group of teachers may be all excited about something and say, clue me in. And I don't care if we have to open with a little speech. I am here to support you. I am here to learn. If we start getting into this and we're not allowed to say anything, then just go back to the other way. And we get everything put down. We know when the meetings are, and then we're told what everybody wants, vote on it. And this is where the problems arise. And going to these group meetings proved out that to me. So I don't know. Are we eliminating our voice in this, or are we trying to keep from someone getting mad at us? I mean, I've never tried to intimidate anyone visiting a school or anything. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is to get down to the root cause and what's the best process for the students. And if we're not allowed to speak at some of these meetings, why have it? Maybe somebody can answer that. Thank you.
Mr. Golden, can I ask a question about the language in line 23 and 24? Well, it's really 23 through 26, part of 26. So the first sentence says the superintendent shall be an ex officio member of all committees appointed and shall not be a voting member. That is straight from state law, right?
Yes.
The second sentence, before any of the changes were made, read, members of the board also serve as ex officio members, period. Is that correct?
That is correct. Members of the board may also serve as ex officio members, period.
May. And that is also from state law?
I don't know specifically if the state law. Well, and that particular language is old. It's been in the policy.
That was previously in the policy. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I can't remember if it just was not prohibited or if it was specifically allowed. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. I was thinking back to one of the policy discussions about where we changed the word may to shall, because effectively we were, as board members, were already defined as ex officio members of this committee anyway.
That's correct.
So why say may when it should be shall? Because effectively we already have that role. Is that everybody's understanding?
Yes.
So what we've done on that, so really those first two sentences before any changes were really functions of state law I think we can safely say that.
Yes. Well,
so
it's certainly not prohibited by state law.
Okay. And then what we've done is added the language about obviously shall, and then to gather information to make appropriate approval decisions. So we've added some editorial language there and emphasized the not voting part. But I guess the question that's being raised, Mr. Cash raised it, is how do we get to the question of what Mr. Galbraith raised about how do you define what participation looks like? Can you really put something in policy that defines how much a person can speak at a meeting like that? If you're attending and you can ask a question but you can't ask two, that's where I'm struggling, is how do you, I understand the intent of what you're saying. I'm just trying to think of how you mechanically limit that or define that.
I know your question might have been a little bit rhetorical, but it does depend on professionalism of all of us.
So it's really subjective and sort of related to the code of conduct. Or behave, just as you say, professionalism.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bostic.
Yeah, I mean, when I, originally wanted to make some of these changes was just to, bring the board and the committee and the teachers and everybody closer together during the process. I mean, that's the idea behind it. I guess I hear like your concern, like you think about the rogue members. I know none of us would do it, right? But later down the road, maybe there'll be a board member, right? That might try and take over in some sense. I suppose I get that concern. I hadn't really thought about that necessarily. I think to your point, Mr. Brown, it's to kind of professionalism and acting in such a way. I mean, just for me, and I know I've kind of said this before, but it's an effort to bring us closer together, to be more involved. Since, I mean, we do have to vote on it at the end of the day, and I just think it's important that we hear, if we take it upon ourselves to go and hear from the teachers, the committee, the stakeholders themselves on it, and whether that's just observation or any input or no input, I don't know, but the idea is to have it closer so that we can try and eliminate some of the, well, why didn't you ask us? Or we didn't know what your thoughts were, or, you didn't ask for this, or whatever, some of those types of things, I guess. That's just my kind of thought behind it.
Before I call on you, Jake, guys, can you scroll back to the first page, please? To the bottom, sorry, thank you. All right, Mr. Galbraith, then I'll say something after you.
I just saw what you saw, but I'm totally fine to leave it. I guess to Jason's point, just making it part of the record, get everybody on the same page that we're not there to. I guess Danny, you and I might disagree a little bit on how our questions might influence the board. I certainly want to have opportunity, and even before and after and breaks and things to discuss these things with the teachers and the committee members, I think is fantastic. Like I said, I went to the first meeting, and Jason and Dave were both there, and we sat like a fly on the wall in the back and just observed. And I think I just feel like that's the most appropriate way to go. I wholeheartedly think that there should be I think having a single board member is appropriate there. Somebody who the intention is to be there and participate as a member of the committee, non-voting still, but as it serves, when I went to that first meeting and I was the only board member there. So I think when all of us are invited, I think it might depend on the meeting. I think there will be a good amount of participation. I expect there to be with when the publishers come and we get to see the Q&A there and the presentations. I think that's going to be very informative. That's the reason we have this, and a lot of the other additional information. All this is good stuff. I just wanted to speak to that, and but I guess, Josh, before I go, everybody who was, most of y'all were at the committee. At the policy committee, and I'm not sure, did we come out of this saying that we were going to that the board member was going to be appointed and was going to subscribe to the oath required by state law, even though it's not required by state law? I don't remember that coming out of our committee.
Dr. Reeves?
Yeah, no, we left it as, so shall really should be may. And we left it up to the decision of the person who was being appointed to the committee.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, that's what we discussed.
Mr. Golden, can you speak to the purpose behind the oath that's members of that committee take, and how that might not be something the board members would be required to do given our other overarching oath that we take.
Yes, sir. And so I'll be restating in part an opinion that you all received from Ms. Osbrooks a few weeks ago. She, obviously she's not here, but to paraphrase, she opined that the board members already have that financial responsibility as board members, not to be influenced by any financial impact, and that the oath that was described for the voting members paralleled the responsibilities that the board had already committed to. And again, she opined that it was not necessary for board members to sign that. And and Mr. Cook, I can't remember the details of it off the top of my head, if it was based on two reasons or just one. Two reasons potentially being ex officio and not voting, plus being a board member. But in any event, her conclusion was it was not necessary.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a different recollection of the conversation. I thought that we agreed if you're ex officio, you're not taking the oath. But I think the board member appointed to attend and serve on the committee shall subscribe. I agree with the wording as it is right now. I just feel like it aligns the board member with with the committee and their work. And I'm not sure why we would, I feel like it reinforces accountability and integrity. And I'm not sure why we would say no to that. So, thank you.
Mr. Galbraith?
Okay. I guess I'm gonna make the motion primarily because I guess no, I completely agree that there were a number of different opinions shared on that, but I mean, just reflecting I'm trying to reflect what came out of policy meeting, and that's not what we agreed to. So I'm gonna amend line 23 to may, from shall to may.
Can you, let's be specific that it's the second shall in that sentence.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're correct. So one board member shall be appointed to serve on the committee and may subscribe to the oath required. I don't even know. I guess I wish Dana was here, and I apologize for not seeing this before, but I don't understand. It says required by state law. I mean, it almost implies that the oath is required by the board member, which it's not, which we already have an opinion that it's not. So it's just bad language. I guess I'm just gonna say one board member shall be appointed to serve on the committee, period, and delete the rest of that sentence.
It's a proper motion. Is there a second? Second. Okay, any discussion on the amendment? Okay, to be clear, the amendment is to strike everything after the word committee in the sentence beginning on line 23 and ending on line 24. Beginning on line 22, ending on line 24. Any discussion? Okay, we're ready to vote on the amendment.
The vote is 10 yes, 2 no.
Okay, the amendment passes. So we're back on the policy as amended. Any discussion? Okay, we're ready to vote on the policy as amended on second reading.
The vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Okay, the policy is adopted. Next policy is 6.312, use of wireless communication devices.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you all know, board members, there's a proposed substantial change to the policy that you all have discussed for the last 2 months. It's certainly open to any discussions you may want to have following up on the most recent work session discussion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. As Mr. Golden said, we have the amended policy that was passed on first reading before us. Dr. Reeves.
All right. I'm going to move to amend policy 6.312 by replacing the current paragraph under the general section as follows. All such devices must remain silenced and not carried on the student's person, for example, in a pocket or held in the hand during the school day. Devices must be stored in a secure location, such as a school-designated storage area within the school setting, or a district-approved pouch system if carried in a backpack, purse, or stored in a locker, or a personal vehicle so that they are inaccessible to students throughout the school day, except as permitted under the defined exceptions. Additionally, under exceptions, I move to add a new item that reads, so currently there are 4 exceptions, so I'm adding a 5th. Number 5, when a student in grades 9 through 12 is in his or her scheduled lunch period, during that lunch period, the student may retrieve their device from the approved storage location and use it only in the school's designated lunch area. The student must return the device to the storage system upon completion of the lunch period. And would you like me to speak to why I made that motion?
Just, yes, but I want to be clear. You're amending the amended policy that was adopted on first reading, not the original policy. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, please go ahead and explain.
Okay. So I brought forward this motion after going back and listening to everybody's comments at the work session. And the 2 biggest things that I heard were, number 1, allowing for some sort of use at lunchtime. And so this provides for that. And the second thing is I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that this policy was brought forward after the committee made recommendations. And one of the things they said to us is that they wanted us to define away and off the body. And so this also does that with this motion to amend. So that's why I brought it forward.
All right. Do we have any discussion?
We have a second.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we need a second on the amendment. All right, we have a second. Mr. Beasley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, I guess, be clear. I think this is a really good compromise, Dr. Reeves. I'm just trying to figure out, we have so many schools, and I'm trying to figure out the designated locking up area. So that's what I had a question about.
Sure. So actually, I'm not, I can't.
I'll allow you to respond.
Thank you. So appreciate the question, Mr. Beasley. The language is drafted to provide focus, but also allow some flexibility from school to school. So what Fairview chooses to do, Fairview High, might look different from what, Franklin High or Indy or Centennial does. So that's why there are several different options. And I don't think that we need to fully define what those might look like right now. That's another piece of this, is to give the district runway, 8 months, to figure that out, to possibly pilot some solutions as well. So I was re-energized by attending the TSBA conference on Saturday. There was an excellent presentation from Warren County, who has adopted a bell-to-bell policy. And also, there were vendors who were selling different sorts of solutions. And here is one such solution. I just wanted to bring it tonight. Actually, a mom who has Centennial High School students works for that company and gave me this pouch. So there's lots, the only reason I'm showing this is that there's lots of different solutions out there, and I believe that we should give the district some time to figure out what that might look like, to pilot it in a few schools if they wanted to. This particular pouch, when you put a device in it, it acts like a Faraday cage. So when the cell phone is in here, it prevents signal. You can't get text to your smartwatch. You can't get signal to your earbuds. So point being, there's lots of different options out there, and we've pushed the implementation date to August of 2026. And this gives the district the time to figure out some of those different implementation factors.
Do I need to request again? Come on.
Yeah, you'll have to get back in the queue.
Okay.
Well, you can go ahead. You had the floor. Go ahead.
So I'm trying to understand, and then I believe in some of your language you said that the student, they could have the cell phone in their backpack. Is that an option or no backpack?
It would be in a secured device in their on their backpack. So say if it was in something like this and the school leadership decided they can carry these around on their backpack, that would be an option.
And the school district would pay for those?
Yes, which is, well, I mean, it depends on what the school district decided to do. But that's another important piece to why, you know, if we make this determination now, they'll have time to potentially include it in budget.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Clements?
Thank you. So I didn't get the amendment till I got here tonight, so I might peek on yours for a little bit. But I think one of the things that I was, and I appreciate the flexibility on this, and but I don't know. I think I might not be the only one that's had this happen, but as I was looking over this weekend, the difference between the two policies, like the current policy is just a page, and this new policy that's proposed is 5 full pages, and we have all been hyper focused on that whole lunch aspect. The bell to bell, or the high schoolers have it from. Are they still allowed to keep it at lunch? And that has been what we've been so laser focused. And I started looking through this policy, and I think there's things that I would like to see changed in process, and that I didn't really look at it because we were so laser focused on that one aspect. And so I think there's some things I would change, maybe just to cut down and maybe be a little more straightforward, and not so, maybe remove some language that I think might be unnecessary. And so I kind of didn't expect the amendment tonight, and now I'm really struggling on this because there's some things I still want to work on. And if we do approve this policy, for example, on the second page where it talks about the school setting and we describe all the areas, I think we know what the school setting is, and we don't need a list of all the areas of the school. So there would be some things that I would want to change in this policy. But I'm welcome to hear, interested in hearing the discussion on the amendment. So,
Mr. Cash?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Claire. That was the main thing from parents, from students, that they have some communication. And I think this is an ideal way to do that. I set a designated area or whatever, but there's, like Ms. Reeves said, there's different options. But I agree with this, and I think this is a real compromise. It still allows them to have their lunchtime and, just converse one-on-one and whatever they're going to do. And at the same time, if you need to check in on your phone, it's available. You can do that. Sometimes I think we rely too much on communication, and students aren't learning to make decisions on their own in a lot of cases, where they've got to call parents about everything. And I know some parents will take offense at that, but this is a time for them to learn. And it was brought up tonight about learning responsibility and everything else. And I think this is a break from the phone. And this will eliminate the problem in the classroom. I think this is a very good idea, a good proposal. Thank you.
Dr. Reeves?
Oh, Okay, I had pushed the button, but I'll speak really quickly to something that Donna said. Well, I need to gather my thoughts. I had a thought and then, yeah. Okay, I'll pass. I'll come
Want
back.
to get back in the queue?
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Galbraith.
Thank you. So I think Dan just touched on it, but I think one of the good parts of this compromise to me is that by I'm taking what I heard, a portion of what I heard from the students, since they really weren't asked asked to weigh in on all of the nuance of the policy. We have to kind of discern what they were saying, and we do have to make some conclusions. But what I heard them say when they said that the pouches in the front of the classroom were more effective for them to have focus even in the classroom than being in the backpacks. What I heard is that just being in the backpack is not an effective deterrent from them feeling an urge and temptation to go in there because it is accessible. And so while this does two things. One, I think it provides more specificity than I would like. I would have rather gotten rid of the, going back to the unamended without specifying lunch, and then we can move forward and figure out what an appropriate time and or place to get access to the cell phones if it's necessary. There might be other communications, but be that as may, I'm fine with the compromise to say, okay, at a minimum, they would have time to get to retrieve their phone from whatever secure type of storage there would be. I think what I hear Claire doing with this amendment is essentially saying that just being in the backpack is not an acceptable form of storage. And I think that what that does is that puts it into Jason and their staff's hands to say, okay, now y'all come up with a solution, because I really do think that the classroom will be positively, the experience in the classroom will be positively affected by this change. So if we think, I think the reporting that has come back to us in terms of violations and how well the policy's doing, I discount all of that, honestly, because of what I know to be true, and that is if the reporting back of the current policy said, you know what, there's too many violations during transition time that we can count, and our focus is to focus on the classroom. So we're not even keeping track. We're just trying to do the best that we can, and we actually recommend that you don't try to make us the phone police to enforce an unenforceable policy. I would have given the data much more credence. But since it's not, and then we hear from the lady tonight that says that her child has access to their phone during every at some point during every class period. I mean, I have similar personal experience to say that's true as well for me and my kid. And so, but the fact that that's all been kind of washed over and just like, yeah, but it's going well. I said, yes, it is. I'm sure it is going better than it was in past years. And when we heard from when I was able to sit in on the screen time committee, and I heard the middle school principal talk about how their former policy they've been operating under the Away for the Day for several years now. But they experienced with this, the start of this school year, they experienced an increased amount of focus and compliance, and the rationale was that it was district policy now, and so there was greater adherence to that. So what that says was they had an Away for the Day policy in the past, but it wasn't being followed. It was being loosely followed, or maybe followed differently at different schools. But I think so for me, the most important part of this is that it reinforces, and it will require much less supervision and enforcement on our teachers and staff, and better focus during the instructional time, and still allow for those exceptions and for the times where the students need to use it. Thanks.
Dr. Johnson.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to what Donna mentioned. I just think that there's several things in this policy that we need to revise and edit. Even if we make this amendment under staff expectations, it talks about teachers will provide a designated storage area. And then under, let's see, and that's on page 4, line 4 through 9. And then student and family responsibilities talks about, it's optional. One concern I have about a pouch is if the district provides the pouch and then something happens to the cell phone in the pouch, then are we held liable for that? Because right now we're not held liable because it's optional. The other part of the policy we've talked about that probably needs to be revised is around consequences, because particularly in high school, the first, second, third offense is logistically impossible to enforce. Another logistics I just think about is if the phones are stored away. I mean, my son has 27 minutes for lunch. He's supposed to go try to get the phone and get back to, I just don't know how that's going to work. So my concern is that the policy has too many discrepancies and maybe, we make a motion to defer it, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'll let y'all keep talking. Couple things about the pouches. Can students open those, or do they have to be opened by someone else? Can I ask her that?
You can.
Okay.
So again, it depends on the pouch, right, that the district decides. This particular example, it's Velcro, but you can hear it. Right?
Okay.
But it allows for that teacher discretion piece if they need to use it for instructional time. One of the, Ms. Purvis brought up an example of in physics class, AP Physics, they use their phones to do slow motion recording videos or something. So I don't think we should get ahead of ourselves with making assumptions about how enforcement is going to work. Again, that's why we have 8 months, and the district can do a pilot program or figure some of those things out. So,
but I guess that's the concern I have about the amendment. It's just how specific it is. I think I would rather us come back and do a higher level policy, kind of to Donna's point. The current policy's 1 page, and then let districts and the district and the different schools how to implement. But that's good to know, because I've been to Zanies, and those yonder pouches, you had to go touch a particular, and I thought that would be logistically that would be a disaster. So that's good to know. Do you have an estimated cost on?
I was told these are under $20 a pouch, and then when an order is placed, it comes with a certain amount of excess pouches for free.
All right, thanks.
Dr. Reeves, you have the floor again.
Okay. So I remembered what one of your concerns at work session was that you wanted to focus on enforcing the current policy as it's written. And I agree with Mr. Galbraith. I think that we all have received plenty of examples from parents who've emailed in, from public comment tonight, that show us that our current policy isn't being enforced consistently in our schools. And that's because it's written in a way that makes it hard to enforce, quite honestly. I mean, I think Dr. Webb spoke to the fact that, we right now we specify that kids can't use their phones during transition period. Yet, teachers aren't going to be in every single hallway. So as soon as a kid is out of view, they have an opportunity to open, get out their phone and get on it. So I do think that this addresses that concern. I also think, speaking to Dr. Johnson's concerns, that I view this as an iterative process. So if we give the district the opportunity now to start to think through some of these issues in implementation, maybe pilot a few things, I fully expect them to come back to us and say, hey, we need a tweak to the policy. And I specifically did not include consequences. I agree with Mr. Bostic when he said, the first consequence should probably be confiscation. I agree with you. And I think we would want to bring the policy back to tackle some of those things, maybe again with input from our leadership and the principals at schools. Because the consequences that are in the policy came from the committee. So I just want to reiterate that I view this as an iterative thing. I would encourage us to pass this amendment and then pass the policy as amended tonight so that we give the district time to figure out what it will look like.
Ms. Hibma?
Yeah, I think this is a very good compromise. I agree with a lot of Jay's comments. And that was one of my big issues with the current policy is that students have the phones in their hands all day long. And so this would alleviate the enforcement element that we find is lacking. But I also want to have the board consider that students purchase their own pouches because then they take ownership. The families put money into it. And because when you give something for free, then a lot of times you don't take care of it as well as if you've purchased it yourself. You would keep it for 4 years or, that type of thing. So, but just generally, I like the amended policy that's been put up.
Dr. Driggers?
Yeah, I've been doing a deep dive for the last 2 months. First thing, I'd like to thank Dr. Gupta. She's right on the science. You have to have the phone at least 5 feet away from the person, and they have to know that they can't reach it, but it has to be at least 5 feet away. It can't be in a purse, it can't be in a pocket, it can't be in a backpack if they have access to it, because their brain is still looking for the endorphin release, okay? Secondly, there are 38 counties in the state that already have a bell-to-bell or a wait for the day policy. They have already resolved all the concerns that I've heard for the last 2 months. They have policies in place, and they have confiscation, disciplinary action, all that kind of stuff. If you're giving them access at lunch, they're still looking at porn. I don't believe that anyone is talking to their mother about their work schedule for 25 minutes at the lunch hour, okay? Doesn't take 25 minutes to talk to mom. And the girls get back into bullying. If you have a bell-to-bell policy, bullying goes way down because they don't have any access during the day. Can't really measure the porn. But so if we have the compromise and they can use with the pouch and they can use the phone at lunch hour, you're still giving them access to a very addictive item. So I'm glad for the pouch. It's better than nothing, but we're still letting our kids see things they shouldn't be seeing or doing.
Just to be clear, the amendment before us would allow the phones to be in the backpack, just inside of a pouch in the backpack.
I heard that.
Okay.
And that pouch could either be in the backpack or hanging off the backpack, as I understood it. But they're still good. I'm going more to the lunch break,
sure,
when they actually take it out and they actually use it and where they go and what they do.
Sure.
That's all I had.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Welch?
Thank you. So I want to go back to kind of what we talked about Thursday night a little bit too, and bear in mind what we're focusing on here was just that 25 to 40 minutes during the lunch break still. That was the big one. Honestly, I think I would be more in favor than just get rid of it rather than try and slice it up with this amendment. When we're talking about the lunchroom cafeterias, most students don't eat their lunches there. I haven't been to every high school, but I've seen Centennials and Independences and Franklins, and the kids, I'd say a majority of them aren't eating their lunch in there. So is this just kind of a backdoor way of trying to create that? If so, then let's just do it, not overcomplicate it. But as we talked about Thursday night, and everyone knows this, the parents are not for this. The principals are not for this, and the teachers are not for this. And that doesn't mean that we can't proceed forward. But if we're going to do something that is in opposition to the wishes of our full community, our parents, our principals, our teachers, then I think we should have two things in place first before we do that. One is we need to have a good communication plan. And we need to kind of explain why this has happened and bring them on board. And we've not done that at all. And I give us and our staff some grace on that because, when we implemented this, with the timing with the legislature, we had to move very quickly to meet state deadlines. But we've not kind of had these conversations and buy-in, collecting the feedback. I compared a bit to when we were doing the walking zones to schools. And we had sort of the town hall meetings and got feedback and we adjusted and everything else. Here we are, make an amendment to this. I think it was sent out at 4 o'clock. I didn't see it till later. And I'm not throwing you under the bus, Claire. I know you've done this, hearing the feedback and sort of adjusting from that. But I don't think this is a course correction. I think this is a change in direction right here. Because it's pretty impactful when you say, you got to do it here, but that's not actually where you eat. When I did my tour, going around, and I saw things too, like kids in the art classes who were doing their art projects or doing their watercolors and just listening to music on their phones. So things like that in all the little different ways that you take away from it. So need good communication plan, and I said, you got to be buttoned up. And we've not been with that. We talk about the research, and we talk about it as though it's kind of one thing. Dug into it a little bit more this time, and a lot of what's been discussed talks about kind of a all to a nothing comparison. We've taken it out of the classrooms. If you're saying, well, it's not being enforced in the hallway, this really doesn't change anything, honestly. The kids are already breaking the rules, but suddenly we're going to enforce the rules in a slightly different way, and they're suddenly going to follow it because of that. I don't think that's realistic. I think instead we need to, again, talk about more culture and everything else and making responsible decisions. And these are young adults that we're talking about. When I was their age, I joined the military for multiple years. So a little bit of that. The other thing with it, and so I hear kind of about a lot of there's two districts that we heard a lot come out about. It's Warren County, and the other one was oh goodness, what was the one in Georgia?
Forsyth.
Forsyth, yeah. And can we pull up Forsyth County website, please? Forsyth County Public Schools. Can we pull that up on the website?
That may take a minute. Do you want to keep going beyond that?
How long does that take you, Tim? There we go. So this was one of the systems that came up, and I can't recall who brought it up, but it was sort of talked about, well, here's a system that has figured it out. They're like us. They're high achieving. They're on a consortium. They've done the community involvement. If you can scroll down a little bit here on the page, and that second button, distraction-free education. And so I'm trying to keep an open mind about this. And so I heard about this, and so I went and I looked at what they were doing. And there's a lot of great information here. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, in fact, don't click on it. But, town hall meeting. There's important links. There's resources. Scroll up a little bit. There was a lot of community engagement and FAQs that's created, how to protect my child and all the facts and everything else. So it was handled in a really good way. It's you seem to get the two things, a communication plan and the buttoned up. Click on the distraction-free education policy, if you would, please. And so right there under guidelines, high schools, here's their policy. All cell phones and personal electronics must be turned off and stored away, read from here, during the bell-to-bell school day. However, students may access cell phones and personal electronic devices during assigned lunch periods. So the irony here is this was the case study for a district that did it right, that did all the research, went through all the hurdles, jumped through, and they're doing bell-to-bell, except they're not. They're doing what we are. They're treating their young adults in high school as young adults and saying they don't need the phones in the classroom, but they can have it during lunch. And look at the length of the policy. I did the same thing. I looked at several different school policies and everything else. Ours is by far the lengthiest and most complicated of anything. One of the things I went to TSBA was a webinar on policy, and TSBA, what they talked about is policy is not procedure. We're getting very heavy in procedure. The other county that we talked a lot, thank you, Tim, that's all I needed if you want to go back. The other county we've talked a lot about is Warren County, about what they're doing and how they have figured it out. Warren County is a very different system from us. And I want to be very careful with this because I don't want to come off the wrong way. They have one high school, Warren County High School, and it's a good high school. I looked on the state report card. It has a B letter grade. It has good academic growth scores. But they're in a very different place than we are. You look at the achievement rates for Warren County for high school and the achievement rates for Williamson County, and we're overall 145% higher. Our achievement scores are more than twice what Warren County's are. In ELA, English Language Arts, it's 101%, almost exactly double what their achievement scores are. In math, it's 167% higher. Again, way more than double. Science, its closest one, we're still about 70% higher, so still almost double. And in social studies, we're 340% higher. We're 4 times higher in achievement than they are. And again, I don't say this to bash our colleagues. I say it to say they're in a different place than we are to do things. And so if our social studies scores were now less than 1/4 that they were, I'd want to do some drastic changes too, pretty quick. If superintendent said, "Hey, let's get rid of cell phones completely," I'd probably go, "Hey, let's get rid of lunch completely too, and let's turn it to study hall, and they can eat during that. Let's get studying. Let's look for changes." That's not where we are with this. And so I kind of go back to just everything being buttoned up. We're saying some things that aren't true. We're trying to make some decisions based upon faulty information. Some of the research that we've been sent, and it's the research. There's not the research, there's research. And I'm sorry, it's a sort of a pet peeve because you look at all the different factors. Is it apples to apples? What's the size district? Is it urban or rural? Is it all or nothing? How long has it been implemented? Changing it? Everything else. I don't think what we're doing is that drastic. And the feedback I've gotten, it has been positive. And I take that. I take that back. It's been very positive information. In 6 months, is it perfect? No, not even 6 months. Are kids still sneaking and breaking the rules? Well, they're kids. Of course they are. And that's part of this whole exercise, is to teach them to make good decisions and get them to being young adults. And so the change that we're doing here, I think, just complicates the mix so much. And we haven't thought it through. We haven't, because, again, I just saw this, I don't know what time it is. I saw this less than 4 hours ago and have not thought through nearly all what are the implications. I don't know what I don't know. I don't even know what questions to ask about it yet. But I do know, from what I've seen, that we're talking about limited cafeteria. Those kids aren't eating lunch in the cafeteria, most of them. Thanks.
Mr. Galbraith.
Thank you. I guess it's important that the timing of this is really important, as I know Margie mentioned something about deferral. I think getting this in place and sending Jason and staff clear direction on what we need more information on to be able to. A lot of the objections that I heard on Thursday night and throughout this process were objecting to potential logistical concerns over solutions that we don't have recommendations for yet. And so what this does, and it is a compromise, because we're keeping the lunch time able for students, clearly, that students can access their devices, and that's going to look different based on the type of storage solution that Jason and his staff come up with over the next couple of months. And there might be a couple of different ones that are that might be piloted. I don't think this. I guess if we want to make sure that we're working off of good information, I don't think teachers or students or principals were asked. I don't think they've weighed in on this amendment necessarily. I don't think this amendment says anything that everybody hasn't been. I guess if you take the two groups, the whole away for the day and those who want their devices available to lunch, I don't think this says that the devices aren't available at lunchtime. It says quite the opposite. So I think it's unfair to characterize the feedback that we've gotten as negative towards this. I actually think it's positive, and it kind of takes a step in the direction and brings both sides together. I just think it's a mistake, and I've seen it over and over. And we've made this mistake, I feel, with the start times policy, in that we were trying to trying to make a decision based on all of the logistical issues, and it's not the kind of thing that you can't adjudicate. You can't write policy off of things that you don't know. And so what you have is, and Metro's doing the exact same thing now. They're right now they announced that they're taking a step and trying to take the first step in leading the community, not just asking them, hey, are you in favor of, what are our current start times like to you? They said, we're going and doing a study, and we're going to go investigate, and we're with the intention of making some changes, and so that takes leadership. So we can't crowdsource policy. What we can do is make a decision that this is the best thing for our students, and then we got to work out the details. But the first thing we got to do is make the decision to move forward because it's the best thing for our students, and that's what we're doing tonight.
I don't have a speak button, so I'm going to insert myself, and you can respond to some of the things I'm going to say since you're next. So a couple of observations. One is that I'm looking at your language, Dr. Reeves, and what's in the second section under the exceptions, what strikes me about that, even though I appreciate the attempt at compromise, it's essentially conceding that we're going to allow students to have their phones during lunch. What I'm afraid it does, possibly unintentionally, is for some students makes it a practical impossibility that they could actually use their phones. When you think about if they're storing it in an approved storage location, not in a pouch that's on their person, they've got to go to wherever that location is in the building, get their phone, come to lunch, get their food, go to find whatever spot they're going to eat, and then in the 15 minutes they have left, then go back and return the phone to the location. So I think, practically speaking, that seems to be potentially challenging, and I think probably deserves some more thought. The other thing in the first section, all such devices must remain silenced and not carried on the student's person. But later in that paragraph, it talks about students having the option of carrying it in a pouch in their backpack, which is technically on their person. So I guess those two things stood out to me as things to think about. But the larger point, I think, is as much as the pouches have probably worked in other districts and might work in ours, I just don't think the use that tool has not been vetted by our district, and I would be really hesitant to put something in policy that tells us we're going to use that tool when that tool hasn't really been vetted by the district. So again, I appreciate the spirit of compromise. I think this at least gets us further in the thought process, gets us further down the road, at least. So I'm just not sure we're ready to vote on this amendment, or that I'm ready to vote on this amendment. But I will say that for me, the thing that I'd like us to do, I'd like personally, not as chair, as a board member, my personal preference is that we adopt the thing that we can agree on, get that on the books as a policy, and then come back, as you said, as an iterative process. Come back and overlay some things. If we decide through the vetting process that Mr. Golden does with the team that the pouches are the right way to go, we always have the ability to come back and overlay that onto the policy that we adopt. So my preference would be to vote no on this amendment, but to approve language that specifically allows for phone usage for 9 through 12 during the lunch period, which seems to be a consensus. I'm not speaking for anyone, but seems to now be somewhat of a consensus. And then let's figure out the other details about storage, enforcement, as we go. All right, you're recognized.
Okay. I'll speak to some of the things that you said first. So again, I think that we should be careful not to make assumptions about how this is going to be implemented. Our role as a board is to write policy and to provide direct, point the district in the direction that we want to go. And we are doing it now to give the district a long runway, much longer than other districts who have done this have had, to make some of these decisions. So, the concern about not carrying on the student's person, and there's a parenthetical right after that says, for example, in a pocket or held in the hand during the school day. So it's clarifying what that means versus later in the policy. There are several different options that the district can choose. So a school designated storage area, yes, might be an option. Maybe that storage area is in the cafeteria. But again, those are the details that I don't think we should necessarily get bogged down with at this time. It's more of a decision of, is this the direction we want to go in? And then we're giving the district that time to figure out implementation. When it comes to the exception about lunch, I'm glad everybody's recognizing that it is a compromise, because it is a big compromise. And, I really listened to what everybody said at the work session. I left it, the wording is not specific. It doesn't say cafeteria. It says designated lunch area, because I too have gone in and observed lunches at Indy and Franklin High and saw that kids sit in various areas. So to me, because I didn't specify cafeteria and said designated lunch area, that it still allows that flexibility. So, a couple other points. We point out Warren County, and it's a smaller school district. Their high school has 1,800 kids. So if a high school with 1,800 kids can figure out how to do it in one high school, we can figure out how to do it in 10 or 12 high schools. The New York City Public Schools District, the largest district in the country, has figured this out. They're mandated by state law to have an away for the day policy. When it comes to communicating this, sometimes you need to, we as a board set the policy and then the district executes. And that is what we've seen over and over. So the communication plan comes after we have set a direction. So again, I would encourage us to vote on this amendment. I would urge you to vote yes to it. And let's put something in place, recognizing that this is a compromise, recognizing that our current policy as written does not work the way we had intended it to, and that this provides some of that additional accountability that is probably needed. So.
Mr. Bostic.
Couple things. So I just want to say that I do see it as the compromise, and I appreciate it, because it was one of my biggest concerns was access, and so this amendment kind of fulfills that. So I'm appreciative of it. I also just want to reiterate that I want to commend Dr. Reeves on her work that she put into this, because a lot of these things that she wrote into this policy, and I know it's somewhat lengthy, but these were a lot of things that the committee asked for clarification on. So like definitions, what do you do with earbuds and smartwatches and all that? There's language in here for that. What do what's considered the school setting? And there's language in here for that. What are the exceptions? There's language in here for that. These were all things that they had questions about. What are the consequences look like? So I think we need those pieces in part of whatever policy we look to implement. So I'm appreciative of that. I did talk with Dr. Webb. We had some correspondence back and forth. I was hoping she would be here tonight, but so I don't want to speak for her other than I might just read a quote or two from her email. But I did bring up to her, I had a question about, should the first offense be confiscation, and we talked about that. And she brought up some points about is the teacher confiscating it? And then it gets into is it in their desk? And then it's lost or damaged personal property and what liability that might put in and different things, which I hadn't really thought about. So I appreciated her thoughts on that. And she also mentioned, kind of how the consequences are laid out now. I think she feels like those are appropriate, and they would kind of log the first offense in Skyward, and the second offense would also get logged into Skyward. And I think the idea might be that the administrator would call that student to the office to then confiscate the phone. And so she kind of laid out some ideas with that there. As far as needing to get, I feel like we need to get them something earlier rather than later, because they are kind of waiting to see what our direction on it is, to start implementing some of these things to work on, which was basically what she told me. But she also said, that, and I'll just quote what she said here to me, but she said, I trust you on your recommendation. I'm comfortable with the consequences as presented. And just as we have discussed with any other changes, my crew would have plenty of time between now and August to lay out a clean process for implementation and education. Once you guys decide what you'd like to see done, we will make it happen. So they're on board and they're waiting for direction from us. So if there was a will of the board overall to defer, I wouldn't want to defer it very long, if at all. And I think there's a lot of good things here. I am in favor of, allowing it for the lunch period. I think that's important. Going back and forth between the pouch thing, once again, is it in a backpack? Is it in a different area? Is it in a pouch or not? I'm assuming, and maybe wrongly with this amendment, but would there be the discretion for the district in that as they're looking into that? Because what if they were to come back and say, we think it should just be in their backpack or a locker or something like that, not necessarily in a pouch. Would this amendment as written now, would it prohibit them from being able to bring that recommendation, or would they have to figure out a totally separate location or a pouch or something like that?
Well, the way that it reads is there would be options. One of the options would be an off-site, a central storage location somewhere in the building, and one of the options would be the student could choose to have it in a pouch in his or her backpack. So it would be a choice.
So it's either a location or a pouch, like a pouch like that that's on their personal property in some sense. Not like just without a pouch, but in a backpack. That's not an option, right?
Not
Or
according,
or maybe
not
it would
according
be
to
an
the-
option.
Not according to the amendment. The amendment requires a pouch or a storage location as the only options. Am I right?
Yeah, I have to think about that.
All right, Mr. Welch.
Thank you. So I just kind of a couple comments real quick. One thing, I don't think we can say Warren County has figured this out as it pertains to this amendment, because Warren County doesn't allow you to bring them at all. So they haven't figured out in terms of this amendment. Nobody has. This is unique from what anybody else is trying to do. And again, I think it goes back to the level of complexity that we're trying to do with it. New York, I can't speak to New York City, but I did, because it was brought up during the work session, I did look it up, and I kind of read what the Governor of New York, her thing on it, and their legislation was no unsanctioned use during bell-to-bell, but does give schools flexibility to develop their own phones policies that work locally. So as I read that, a district could sanction local use. So if we're saying New York is as a state bell-to-bell, I don't think that's accurate. New York also provided $13.5 million for storage for the schools, and it requires that teachers, parents, and students be consulted in the policy development. So I take that back to the two things I talked about, being buttoned up, make sure what we're actually saying is supportive of our arguments is actually accurate, and two, the level of communication with it. But I want to talk to the timing of this. Tony, I think you asked correctly, how would this work? And we don't know, because now we've got this, again, another direction change for something that we're talking about implementing in 9 months. Let's actually think through the implications of it. Let's get the buy-in and everything else from it. Our staff, before we move forward with it, it just feels so much like there's trying to be an end result here, and just figuring out, well, how do we get to it, even if that path doesn't quite work there. So, thank you.
Dr. Johnson?
So again, I bring up, I think we all agree and appreciate the lunch being added. I do have have concerns about the only three choices about secure location, district pouch or personal vehicle. I mean, if the pouches are $20, we have a little over 14,000 high schoolers. That's $280,000. And I think your spirit is flexibility, but by naming specifics or like, it makes it like these are the only three choices. So, like I said, I'm very in favor of the lunch. I do have concerns about passing the other amendment, and I think that contradicts, like I said, other parts of the policy, but we could fix that later.
Dr. Driggers?
I think we have gotten into the issue of procedure. It is not this board's function to establish procedure. We establish policy, and then we give it to the district, their staff, their principals, their teachers, and they figure out how to do this. So we shouldn't be down here in the weeds deciding what I think are procedure questions, not policy questions. And that we go back to the idea that the district would have until August to figure out those problems, because other 38 counties have, 22 states have, and over 50 foreign nations have all figured this out already. We got a guy who's willing to come up here and brief the board on exactly how they did it. We're also not talking about discipline. What do you do when a student says, no, I won't get off my phone? No, I won't give you my phone. You can't confiscate it. Well, that's a whole nother issue, but these questions have all been answered. They're being used today. So I would like the board to stay in the policy realm and leave the procedures to the district, with obviously consultation and everything, but we shouldn't be telling the district how to do this. We tell them what we want and why, and then they figure it out. That's all I have.
So a question for Dr. Reeves, the maker of the motion. So one of the things that keeps coming up is giving direction to the district, then letting the district figure out the specifics. I'm not making this as a motion right now. I'm asking a question conceptually. Would you be open to the policy saying that the district must prescribe a policy whereby phones will be stored, except that students would be allowed to use their phones during the lunch period? And that forces us into a situation where the district has to now go figure out the best way to create a storage method during the day that still allows for the students to have access to their phones during lunch, and so it's the general spirit of what you're trying to do, but it's less specific.
So I would actually oppose doing that. I think the whole point of this amendment speaks to, again, what the concerns that have been shared, that our current policy is not being implemented as we intended. We've all heard numerous examples of kids being able to use their phones to text parents, to text friends, to take photos, to record videos during instructional time, not to mention whatever's happening in restrooms or transition periods or in study hall. So the whole point of the amendment is to address that issue by getting the phones off students' bodies during all of those times that we have already restricted. And so if we remove the secure storage and off-the-body requirements, we're not really improving the policy. We're just kind of diluting. We're going back to kind of the diluted policy that we have. So we're all on board with fewer classroom distractions. We don't want our teachers to be acting as cell phone police unnecessarily. And we want to establish clear expectations for students. So I think that the amendment as it's proposed achieves that. So I would not be in favor of diluting it, I guess, if you will. I would urge you, if that were proposed, I would urge people to not vote for that. And so, I mean, I was ready to call the question, but before you started talking.
Well, I want to ask Mr. Golden, now that we don't have any speakers on the board, Mr. Golden, you want to give your thoughts on this and perspective after the discussion we've had?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am actually intrigued by the idea of these Faraday cages, which, as an aside, some of our students who spoke might be aware of based on their physics class. That cage, that metal cage blocking the signal. I too went to the TSBA convention. I'm intrigued by it in the context of a next step to minimize distractions during instructional time. So that's a threshold for me. We actually had a discussion about the potential to pilot something like that. Seeing that this pouch, we've gotten some samples. The idea that this would be one that the student could open and close on their own is interesting to me, as opposed to the magnet structure where you create that next step that has to be managed and potentially have lines and some of those stories we've heard. So I'm interested in that. I'm interested in piloting that, finding one of these companies that has that and piloting that to see what kind of impact that might have in the classroom to minimize the distractions. One of the things we've often heard related to this in instructional time is some of the research has indicated that the just feeling the vibration is a distractor, that kind of thing. Now, the policies that we've seen, generally speaking, say turned off. But if we experiment with a pouch, might we hear from teachers and students, okay, so maybe we didn't all turn them off, but when it's actually in the pouch and I have to peel that Velcro, it's truly staying in, and I've minimized the distractions. Regardless of where you land, I am interested in doing a pilot with some classes, and frankly, it might not just be high school. We might pilot it at a middle school because they're to have those off as well. Now that's instructional time, and the board policy as is instructional time. And you may remember when you passed the policy after the law was passed, we took that additional step. At the high school, well, actually at all grade levels, we took an additional step beyond the law. And at the high school level, we talked about not having it out during transition time. I'm interested to see if that might actually be a practical means of enforcing that. Practical, not that they can just be a way to address it without having so many teacher interventions. Again, this is in the context of instruction. When I read the draft as is, Mr. Bostic, you made a couple of comments that struck me as well, related to the detail of it. As I read this proposal, this proposed amendment, it really is, for practical purposes, giving us three choices: either out in your car, to your point, Dr. Johnson, in a locker, or in a pouch. I know that for practical purposes, that means we will need to work on a pouch. I like the idea of vetting and testing that before we make a full commitment to that. If you all vote to do it, we'll do it, but I just know it's going to take that because we don't have enough lockers to go around, and I'm still interested in finding out, could it help with distractions? So when I combine, well, let me also speak to what I have experienced in my professional life as a truism when it comes to policy. Inevitably, when we make a decision on a policy in the moment, we're going to miss something. So my recommendation is, if you're interested in this amendment as proposed, include in there that we will return it to policy committee so that we have time to talk about that amendment. If you as a board believe that this amendment from Dr. Reeves is appropriate, let's have one more discussion at policy committee, just to double check everything. Regardless of that, regardless of where you land, I intend for us administratively to take some action and pilot this. Because like you all at the TSBA convention, it intrigued me. Don't know the pricing yet. Don't know whether we're going to require it of somebody. Don't know any of that. But administratively, it deserves a look. Mr. Chair, I gave a lot of words to you. Did I give you clarity on my recommendation?
I think you did. So I'm gonna make offer an amendment to Dr. Reeves' amendment for the board's consideration. So my motion would be to strike everything in the first section of her amendment and replace it with the following language. The district shall develop a procedure by which students' wireless communications devices can be stored during the school day, except that students in grades 9 through 12 will have access to their devices during their assigned lunch period. Further, I would recommend then striking the second section of her amendment as well. So what would remain in the amendment would be the language I just read, and just a little bit of color on that. I feel like where everybody's in agreement is that students should have access to their phones during lunch. Maybe not everybody, most people. I think that we agree that some type of storage system is potentially a good solution. And I think we don't know quite what that looks like specifically yet, and the district needs to do some work in that regard. So this puts this in policy that the district shall develop a procedure by which those devices can be stored, but leaves the possibility or leaves the ability for students to have their access to their devices during lunch. So that is my amendment. And is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Ms. Wyatt on the amendment,
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to say that I would support that language. I just want to go back to all 9 of our high school principals asking us to allow access for our students during lunch to their phones. Might have said that in reverse order, you'll know what I meant. So I am in favor of that. I also think that considering the storage devices, like Mr. Golden said, it takes the burden off of our teachers for the enforcement and what that looks like. And my main priority is protecting the instructional time. And I feel like your amendment leaves a lot of room for collaboration, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Ms. Hibma?
Would your amendment open up the possibility that they might just be stored in their backpacks alone instead of, because we're kind of taking out the cell phone cubbies. And I think that's alluding to Claire's concern, because that is my concern, because I don't think the kids have the impulse control not to go through their devices, and that's why we're looking at a storage box, pouches in the cars, and things like that.
I think the way I would answer that is that in her amendment, there was the possibility that students could have the phones in their backpack still, even though they would be in a pouch, but they'd still be in their backpack, which I think was contributing to my confusion a little bit about the clarity that we needed on this still. So is that something that could potentially be an outcome? It could. What I think can and should happen, frankly, is that if we adopt this language, that several policy meetings between now and the end of the school year should help us maybe get towards a more refined, add more refinement to this and more specifics to this, again, with the direction of the district as they start to research and vet some of these options. I think the intent is that it should have more potential specificity, or it should cause the district to develop a set of procedures that we can look at and vet prior to them being implemented. So it's not designed to be completely open-ended. It's designed to get us in a posture where the district can do what it needs to do to vet the different options.
Mr. Chair, may I speak to that briefly?
Yes, please.
One of the things we know from conversations with our teachers is so many of our teachers who are placing them in those shoe racks or the cubbies are focused on making sure that they minimize the negative impact on instructional time. We've heard from some of them that they choose that because if it's in the backpack, it might have the potential to be looked at a little bit more easily. That conflicts with the existing board policy that they're not, potentially conflicts with the existing board policy that they are not to be used during transition time. And so part of what I would want to vet would be, is the idea of a Faraday cage a better alternative to either one of those? And so, Mr. Chair, I don't know where we'll land yet because we have a responsibility to have those discussions with our teachers and see what that looks like.
Mr. Cook just brought up a point that because I don't have a button, the system didn't recognize me as making the motion. Mr. King, do you want to explain how that'll get recorded?
Yes, sir. So this is a unique situation. We just found a glitch in the software. So for tonight, we're going to have to put the motion on somebody else to keep it going. But the official record will show that you made the motion and that Ms. White made the second. I didn't want anybody to get confused when it wasn't on the screen correctly, but we'll make sure the record is correct.
Okay. So on the board, it's showing Ms. Wyatt makes the motion, Dr. Johnson makes the second. Yes. But for the future record minutes, it'll be, yes. Got it. Okay. Yes. Dr. Reeves.
I wanted you to repeat the language because I wanted to write it down and really.
Yes. So the language was, and it would essentially strike all existing language in the amendment you offered and replace it with the following. Well, to be more specific, it would strike the first section and replace it with the following. The district shall develop a procedure by which students' wireless communications devices can be stored during the school day, except that students in grades 9 through 12 will have access to their devices during their assigned lunch period. And then it would also strike the second paragraph of your amendment in its entirety. Yeah.
You used the word can be stored. Did you think, it said can be stored. Is that, is shall better, the better there?
I'm okay with can right now, personally. Dr. Driggers.
Yeah, we've been working on this for a while, given the statute that went into place on 1 July. And then we kicked it back to the fall. And then we said maybe something by January. And then we said, no, maybe something by August because you don't want to start a new policy mid-year. Now, if we put this at 3 more policy meetings, I heard the number 3 policy meetings, that makes January, February, March. So I asked Mr. Golden, if this gets kicked back 4 months, can we still implement something by August, which is what the other amendment says?
If this proposed amendment passes, it will give us marching orders to do that analysis starting now. So I think it'll give us some time.
So yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Clements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate this amendment. And just for clarification, if this policy is amended, we will still have time to go back and work on, we're going to throw this back into policy to work on some of the, we will have time, right?
Well, yes, we'll have time. I guess procedurally, what happens if this amendment were to pass, then we're back on the original amendment that was before us, which was approved on first reading, which is the amendment that's been referenced earlier in the discussion. And if, regardless of whether the amendment passes or fails, the ultimate policy passes or fails, there will be opportunities to go back in policy committees in the future to revisit this policy and make further amendments to it. That's always an option for anyone, as it is with any other policy. Ms. Edma?
Yeah, I still feel a little more comfortable staying with Claire's First Amendment, just because, I mean, I do believe that the board is, or the district is leaning towards, some kind of pouches, but I just need a little more certainty, so I'd like to personally stick with that one, even though I think the intent is to go in that direction. That just makes me feel a little secure. So that's my thoughts.
Mr. Chair, if I may add to that, yeah, I'm not prepared to commit to PACS yet. What I was talking about was piloting it and vetting it. So thank you for that.
I just
Yeah.
didn't want just stick it in your backpack
Yeah.
and leave it there.
Yeah, I get that.
Dr. Reeves?
So the district shall develop a procedure by which students' devices can be stored, can be stored
During the school day.
during the school day. So it totally guts what I have proposed, because, and Tanya went to the heart of it, it's the whole point is a secured storage. In a backpack is not secure storage. In a phone pouch is not going to, well, we already know it doesn't help with enforcement of what we currently have. So I feel that the secure storage language is really important, as well as the controlled lunchtime access for grades 9 through 12. And that was like one integrated compromise. So I guess if you have concerns about the current policy that everybody's operating under not being enforced, I think that we have to take a look at and provide direction on secured storage of some sort. And Superintendent Golden has indicated that they'd like to pilot some different scenarios along those lines. So I would urge my fellow board members to vote no on Mr. Brown's amendment, and then let's go back and vote on my amendment.
Let me ask a procedural question. If I were to modify my language, can I do that now, or do I need to call on speakers first?
You can do that as long as the person making the second agrees with it.
Okay. I would modify my language to add the word securely in front of the word stored. So now it would read, the district shall develop a procedure by which students' wireless communications device can be securely stored during the school day, except that students in grades 9 through 12 will have access to the devices during their assigned lunch period. Does the person who made the second agree to that language?
I'll agree to that.
You made, yeah.
I made the motion, sorry.
Yeah.
Not really, yeah. I would just say that I agree with that. I think Margie's about to say that as well. I still think that it supports our teachers in the enforcement, and it is more collaborative than the initial amendment. Thank you.
Okay. On the modified amendment to the amendment, Mr. Welch.
Thank you. Josh, I think you're on the right path with this, but I do kind of question, what does it really do differently from the current policy other than the direction to, as you talked about, the secure storage, which to me, to Dennis's point, I think there's a difference between policy and procedure, and I think that's more procedure, and we just give the superintendent the direction to do that. So while I agree with you, I differ on the modus operandi, if you will. Also, Claire, can I see the pouch right there? Thank you. So here's my backpack. All right, here's my phone, here's the pouch. You don't get to answer. Is my phone in a pouch or not? Because we don't want to make teachers phone police, right? Because just having them in the hallway spotting it is too much to be phone police. So instead we're going to put them in pouches inside the backpack potentially. You just want to raise a question, raise it here. Is my phone in the pouch or is it in my backpack right now? Exactly. Thanks.
To respond to your question, my intent is to try to give direction without prescribing the method by which that happens. Yeah. Mr. Galbraith.
I guess in the effort to get kind of a super majority here and not be divided on this issue, like I think we're almost there. We're almost down to semantics, and I guess my question is just to Claire, who's going to speak in a minute or two. I think ultimately if you agreed with his language on secure storage, I still don't like can versus shall, but I think it has the same effect. And the goal is ultimately to pass this policy with an effective date of August, with a clear direction to Jason and his staff that they're to come up with a plan and procedures for all the things that we need. We need the secure storage. We need a plan on how students can get to it and access and communication, all the things that we've talked about, enforcement. We're ultimately going to have to come back together to go back to policy. We're probably going to have to tweak. Either way, like we're going to have to tweak this. I don't see it as. I'll support both amendments. I think if you supported Josh's amendment, I think that sends a message to everybody. I think we can all maybe most of us can get on the same page. I don't know if we're going to get to unanimous. I don't want to make that set that as the ultimate line in the sand, but I think it sends a clear message if we can come to kind of some agreement there.
Mr. Beasley?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Due to the duration of the meeting, I had to take a break. Okay, so I came back, and so what language are we deciding on now?
Were you around for my initial motion?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. So all we did from what you heard me state originally was we added the word securely, so it shall be securely stored versus just stored. So I'm happy to read it, the sentence one more time if you want.
Thank you.
So my amendment to Dr. Reeves' amendment says it essentially would strike all of her language and replace it with this. The district shall develop a procedure by which students' wireless communications devices can be securely stored during the school day, except that students in grades 9 through 12 will have access to their devices during their assigned lunch period.
Thank you.
Dr. Reeves.
Would you consider changing can to shall? You want me to repeat it? Oh, okay. I asked Mr. Brown if he would consider changing the word can to shall.
I think the shall develop forces is a requirement. And I think the can is more about how it's enabled. So I prefer not to.
So one other thing, this is not just a mini backpack. So it's not like putting a phone in a pack and then within another backpack. This is a Faraday cage. So when you put devices in here, it cuts off any notification, you don't get calls. The minute so it's not gonna put notifications on a smartwatch if a student is wearing a smartwatch. It's not going to sync to earbuds if a student is wearing an earbud. So I think that's a really important consideration that we can't forget. And it's just one example of the type of pouch. So I would prefer shall to can, but I could support the fact that you added in the secure storage. I could support that. So,
Mr. Welch,
I'd like to call the question.
question's been called. That's a proper motion. Is there objection to the question? Hearing none, that shuts off debate. We will proceed to a vote on the amendment to the amendment, which is the language I previously read. Is everyone clear on that? All right, we're ready to vote.
Recommend approval.
Thank you, sorry.
The vote is 11 yes, 1 no.
All right, the amendment carries. So we're now back on the amendment that was on the agenda tonight that was originally passed on first reading, now as amended. Do we need more clarity on that? Is everyone clear on where we are? So the amendment that was passed on first reading, that was Dr. Reeves' amendment that was passed on first reading at the last board meeting, was now before us on second reading. She brought an amendment to her own amendment tonight, which we just modified through my amendment, which struck her language. And now we're back to her original amendment to the policy as amended.
You're voting on.
So my language on plus. So
Right.
But not on the policy.
Yes, policy. Yes, it is. Policy 6.312 as amended on first reading. So remember, we approved Dr. Reeves' language on first reading at the last board meeting, and that's the 5-page policy that you all has been referenced tonight. She was seeking to amend that her own policy. We just amended her amendment with my language, so that language is now attached to the policy that was on our agenda tonight. So what we're now voting on is the original amendment that was on our agenda with my amended language added. So we're not voting on the original wireless policy that's currently on the books. We're voting on the amended policy that is passed on first reading and is now up for second reading.
That'll be effective in August.
That would be effective August 1st per the language of the previous reading. So Mr. Bosser.
So this vote now, there won't be another vote after. So we wouldn't vote for this amendment and then vote the policy as a whole. There won't be a second vote, right?
We will have another vote on the policy as a whole.
So we'll vote on this amendment, which is essentially voting for the thing we just did twice in a way.
Well,
yeah, simply, I'm just.
Well, to be clear,
yes.
The motion before us was the amended policy that came out of first reading.
Yeah.
She had an amendment.
No, we're amending.
She had an amendment.
We haven't added your language to the policy yet. We need to add your language to the policy. All we did is agree on your language just now.
Correct.
Well, what we agreed to was my language instead of her language to be attached to the policy draft that was before us that had passed already on first reading.
So let me see if I can clear this up. The vote before you, if you vote no, basically you're going to be back on the policy without any amendments, the way it was presented to you. If you vote yes, you are voting on the amendment that was originally offered that was amended with that language. Okay?
And then we vote. And then we vote again.
And then there'll be another vote on the whole policy as amended.
So this vote for the amendment is essentially voting the thing we just voted just twice, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. I know it's not, but
right,
it is.
But
yeah.
essentially, it's the effect.
Okay. Well, then maybe my comment is for the next round. I don't. Yeah. I think my comment is for the next vote.
Okay. So what we just did is voted to amend Dr. Reeves' amendment. Now we need to vote on the policy amendment that was before us as amended.
That's correct.
Are we clear on that? Okay. Is there discussion about my language added to the policy? Yes.
We have a recommendation.
I recommend approval.
Any further discussion? Okay, we're ready to vote.
The vote is 11 yes, 1 no.
Okay, the amendment is adopted. Now, we are on policy 6.312 on second reading as amended, which is the substance of which is the policy that the language we adopted on first reading last month with the amendment we just voted on added to it. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions. If the board does have any questions, I want to make two comments.
Please.
Comment one is just an aside. Dr. Webb had to meet somebody at the emergency room, and so she texted me and she said she's following this. So just wanted to make sure you all were aware. Second, just as a reminder, we do anticipate we will need to adjust some of the policy language at some point in the future. But from a substantive standpoint, these changes will go into effect. Do recommend approval.
But not until August 1st.
That's correct.
Right. Okay, we're ready to vote.
The vote is 10 yes, 2 no.
All right, the policy is adopted on second reading. Just when you thought we were done, we have item E, approval of board norms. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, you commit to yourself with the board norms, school board norms, which shows up as policy 1.107, and per your annual agenda, you review those annually and recommit yourself. So it's certainly open to any questions you all may have or any discussions related to those items on the school board norms.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the school board norms? Okay, we're ready to vote.
The vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Board norms are adopted. Final item for tonight is the approval of the superintendent's evaluation instrument. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you all know from the work session, I am recommending just to keep the standard evaluation instrument structurally just as we have in the past, with the caveat that we discussed that probably sometime in late third quarter, early fourth quarter, I may bring you something for the following year to start based on the discussions we had related to school performance metrics that take some earlier planning than our current structure.
Just as a reminder, board, we talked about this Thursday night, but that instrument is populated with the goals that we previously set and approved for Mr. Golden. that we'll be evaluating in June of next year. Any questions? Okay, we're ready to vote.
The vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Okay, the evaluation instrument is approved. Yes, Mr. Galbraith.
Just a quick reminder. Yeah.
Can we turn on Jay's mic?
He got it.
Please?
Thanks.
Okay.
Just a quick reminder that I know a couple people said policy committee in January. Based on our new annual agenda and our experience last January, so we pushed our January policy meeting to December 15th. So it's on that Monday. I think that's a Monday, right?
Yes, sir.
So we've got a December 15th policy meeting. We won't have a policy meeting in January, but then we'll go right into the January work session. So I don't know. I haven't even looked at what's on there. I just know that that's the date that we set. And if we don't have any, it's possible that we don't have any second. Well, we have a couple of first readings that we'll have to meet. So.
It's on your calendar
Yes.
as the January policy meeting in December.
So to be clear, any items that are discussed and come out of policy on December 15th will be on the January board meeting agenda.
Right. Mr. Chair, if anybody has any items for the policy meeting, just get them to us in advance. That's really why we had it in January, because there was literally like, it was 15, 20 business days to get like 3 days of work, or 15 weekdays in order to get like 3 days of work in advance of the policy. So that's why we did it. Just a reminder.
Mr. Bostic, can we?
One quick procedural thing. Since, forgive me, I know Melissa had emailed about this, but I don't remember if there was a response. So, with the passing of the textbook adoption, did we need to vote to appoint a board member for this current?
The CCTE.
For the current textbook adoption, or are we? Since
Well,
we're here,
now that
I didn't know.
Now that the policy is approved, it would direct us to do that. But are we too late in the process to do that now, in the current process?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. We've had one meeting describing it. Let us talk about that and get
Okay,
you all an
okay.
answer by
Just-
email. That's a good question.
But you don't, the executive committee appoints, we don't vote.
No, the board appoints, the board appoints the committee, did that last month.
But the board member, I think the executive committee appoints the board member. We don't vote on that.
We may have the power to do that. We'll have a discussion about it. And if we can, we will.
Popped in my head. Sorry.
Good
Okay.
question.
We're adjourned.